Welcome, one and all, to the inaugural live stream. No, it's not really, actually. It's just a test. This is using StreamYard, the software that I announced I purchased. There is music playing in the background. Can you hear it? Do you find it to be a distraction? And that's where we're going to start before we discuss other things that are making me surly this morning. I generally don't like when software doesn't work the way that I think it should. So I'm already well on my way to surly, and we'll see how this goes as we progress. First thing is, you can't hear it. Outstanding. You can't hear music. All right, you should. No music? All right, hang on. Hang on one sec. This is a partial test stream, so it's going to be rough. It's going to be super rough around the edges. So hopefully you hang out. Can you hear it now? Hang on. Might take a couple seconds to catch up. Can you hear anything now? Absolutely outstanding. Clear and can hear South Thompson Canyon. Why can't you hear the music? Nothing. I mean, we don't really need music. Lewis, you're saying it's working fine for you. Can you hear music? No, just you. Okay. Wait a minute. Let me crank it up a bit. What about now? I should have put the word test in the title if I didn't. Oh, I did. I did put the word test in. That's a disclaimer. Yeah, okay, so music that's not happening. That's good. That's perfect. It's good that that's not working. Maybe we got to put it on top. No, that ain't working. All right, you know what? Forget it. How's everybody doing? What are y'all thinking about right now? What's on everybody's mind today? I don't think it depends on what people are watching on. I think it depends on my technical proficiency, which is lacking. I don't understand, to be completely honest, why you can't hear what I can hear, because I've got my earpiece in, and I can hear it just fine. Province is separating. Yeah, that's on everybody's mind. You're right, it is distracting, so I'm going to shut it off. I think after the Supreme Court ruling about the riding in Quebec, where another Liberal candidate's been tossed and it's either going to trigger a by-election or a general election, I don't think Carney's gambit to get enough MPs to cross the floor is actually going to work. I think the NDP is strategizing on how to become what they used to be, which was the opposition to both the Conservatives and the Liberals. Whether you like them or not, that was their traditional role before. Under Jagmeet Singh, they just became a pension generation fund and a rubber stamp for the Liberal Party. While they grumbled and they moaned and they carried on about how bad the Liberals were, that just were reduced to voting for everything they wanted from the NDP. I think they might reawaken their roots. So I'm not anticipating floor crossers from the NDP anymore. And since things haven't been going the Liberals' way, I think it's quite possible that the Conservative Party, I think it's done. I mean, there's a chance that there might be more, but I highly doubt it, and that increases the likelihood. Sorry, my wife just messaged me and I had to read it. I think there's a likelihood of a general election because even though as I've said on this channel before, the Liberals don't need a majority government. Forget the Liberals. Mark Carney and his government, which is the cabinet under the Governor General, does not need a parliament to rule. They can pretty much do everything they want by an order in council. They could prorogue parliament indefinitely. And they can do and they can spend and they can do whatever they want. But to have a legitimacy to re-engineer this country in the way that I think they're planning on re-engineering this country, regardless of in what direction they're steering the thing. I think they'd like the authorization and the public profile of a majority government. So I think it's quite possible we're going to get one, and then it wouldn't be so bad because if it happens quickly enough, all of the terrible bills that are sitting either in the Senate or in the House on the books right now, they would all go away again, and they would have to start over, and that would be good. Even if the Liberals won again, that would be good because it would give us more time to deploy our speech before they try to regulate it out of existence. You can't hear music either, unacceptable. There's no music. I gave up on that. I have no idea what I'm doing wrong there. Marco Rubio's speech. Are we talking about the old one where he talked about the end of the U.S. dollar, or are we talking about something new that I haven't seen yet? Because I've spent the last 30 hours mucking about with tech, just trying to figure things out. Can't figure out why I don't have music. Tumbler Ridge is still fresh, unfortunately, so sad. Yeah, and by mentioning Tumbler Ridge, we might get algorithmically censored, because it's my understanding that YouTube has decided to put their finger on the balance and the weights to give the mainstream media more say and give influencers less say when it comes to that particular subject. And you can actually see that in my videos, where the second last video I did had a lot more reach than the video I did not yesterday but the day before on the same subject, in spite of the fact that we're much more accurate than CBC. I was asking Grok about, I floated a test balloon about Mark Carney, and Grok came back and said, what you just said isn't factual. And according to reliable sources, and the first reliable source that Grok listed was CBC. And I'm thinking to myself, even the best AI out there is kind of broken when they cite CBC first as a reliable source when it is clearly propaganda. It's not even trying to hide it anymore. And it is sad and it is tragic, but we are not talking about causes. Did you know, let's see, let's get the browser up here. We're not going to do Toys R Us today. My mouse just disappeared. That's good. You can see it, but I can't see my own mouse. So this is just outstanding. Hang on. Hopefully this doesn't break everything. Did that break everything? Or are we still live? Let's see. Did I break everything? Looks like we're still streaming. So I don't know what that would have looked like. Mark Rubio had a JFK speech. Did he reaffirm that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone? Can you just answer me that question? Because I'm not... I've been thinking about that a lot lately, actually. I'm reading a book right now about Alan Dulles and Foster Dulles and the Dulles family. And because, I've been really exploring on the back end this revisiting the Anglo-American establishment and how it came about prior to the Second World War, but also through the Second World War, and then what happened in the 50s and the 60s, because that's the roots. Yeah, it's my belief that in 1963 there was a coup. I don't think it was a fully successful coup. It was largely successful, but I don't think it was fully successful because I think there has been a wrestling match between the duly elected civilian government in the United States and the deep state, which does exist and has a lot of power. That military-industrial complex that Eisenhower so warned about still controls, to this day, a lot of what happens in the United States. When John Kennedy, and if you read biographies, you're not going to hear this version of events, because the story is John Kennedy came along, he had serious ideological disputes with Alan Dulles, and he fired him. And in a lot of not documentaries, but biographies, they say that Dulles rode off into the sunset, and that was the end of it. That was not the case. Dulles turned his residence on Q Street in Washington, you can read into that what you want, Q Street in Washington, turned it into almost a de facto shadow government, where he had high-level people from the CIA and the military-industrial complex, the mafia, many other individuals, media people came through his house. He just kept acting as though he was still directing traffic for the administration. And essentially, there was a soft civil war between the Kennedy administration and Dulles, and we know who won. because Kennedy's not here anymore. And, people say, who killed Kennedy? As if you have to point your finger at one or two or three other shooters. And the fact is, if you study Garrison, if you study the actual files, if you look at everything that's gone down in water under the bridge, you know that it was a conglomeration of interests. It wasn't just Lyndon Baines Johnson, who was probably in on it. It was a lot of other individuals within the state. When the heck were we going to look up? We were going to look something up. This, because somebody mentioned the shooting, and this is the shooter created an online game simulating mass attack. Roblox said it has now deleted Jesse Strang's account, which, by the way, I want to address that because I've pronounced the name Strange instead of Strang, and the reason I did it, and it wasn't clear in my other videos, sometimes I'm way too dry. It's something I have to work on. But the reason that they might be going with Van Rootseller as opposed to Strang isn't that it was his birth name, because let's face it, when it comes to the Polytechnic shooting, we don't use Lapointe. We should look that up. We don't use his birth name, because if we did, we would understand the Islamic undertones that went into that shooting. So we use his given name, and this was before we started all the nonsense about dead naming and everything else. So like we pick and choose for political reasons what we call and how we name things. And it's the same as this, but, I don't think the CBC has talked to you about his online activity. I haven't checked today, but all of the things that this individual was doing that should have been clear red flags that would have triggered already on the books legal ramifications for the access that he had to firearms. And I've also wondered, maybe you guys can answer in the chat because I haven't been able to look into this, but apparently he had a modified handgun. And I'm wondering, if they seized firearms from the house, did they seize the modified handgun and then give that back as well? Because I haven't seen any clarity on that. It wouldn't make a lot of sense. But if they had have seized the modified handgun, that should have triggered automatic weapons charges. And when I say automatic, I just mean it should have triggered charges automatically, because there's no scenario whatsoever where a handgun should have been in that house with a PAL. Marco Rubio had a JFK speech. CBC isn't journalism, it's paid liberal influencing, says Greg Falk. We can see you. You're live. You're live, brother. Clash and Cruise, I appreciate your enthusiasm. Still alive, Frank. Still alive, still here. Yeah, because I actually did Control-Alt-Delete because I had to open to get my mouse back. I don't know why it disappeared. CIA took out Kennedy. CIA took out Kennedy. Deep State took out Kennedy, probably with help from the mafia. His vice president was probably aware that it was going on. That's the sum of all the research I think I've ever done. Secret Bass Riggs is smacking his head. I'm wondering why. I hate emotes because they don't really... Are you reading Quigley's book, The Anglo-American Establishment? Yes, it's sitting over there beside my easy chair right now. And I think I'm going to go back through Tragedy and Hope as well, which is going to take a while because I can't just read all day, but I can't read that all day anyway. There's only so much time. Since 1913, the money trust has been in power. Yeah, they've certainly had the lion's share of control. There's no way Oswald acted alone. The Warren Commission is BS. Yep, Louis Payne, for sure. Kennedy wanted to end the CIA. In fact, he tried. The interesting thing is, Secret Bass Riggs. Okay, you put more words here. CIA, yeah, blah, blah, blah. So they also work for China now? Does that explain what is happening in Canada? You got to be a little bit more clear with your language. I'm not really sure what you're getting at. I think you're angry. I think you came in angry. Channel the anger into focused comments. Try to be concise and try to be to the point. Don't just react emotionally. Put things into words that actually have meaning so that I can understand them and respond to them. Keep working on it. It was mafia and right-wing Cubans. If anything, Kennedy was going to do for Russia what Bill Clinton did for China. So moot point. When Kennedy, like I said, kicked out Dulles, Dulles just kept on ruling outside of office. He didn't relinquish his influence. He just kept on going as though he hadn't been fired. And we know what happened. Is the abuse of hallucinogenics part of the red flag? I mean, I'm sure it plays a component. When you're mixing chemicals in your brain, SSRIs, cross-sex hormones, all of that nonsense, you're going to have issues. Yay, China to learn Mandarin, Frank. I'm not going to learn Mandarin secret. I just don't want to be Chinese. Trump died in a helicopter crash in 1989. Here we go, the rabbit hole. Everybody's got a theory about apparently Clinton died, apparently Biden died, Biden wore a mask. Yeah, I've heard lots of these things. They're good stories, really good stories. Mark Lepine was a bad man. Yeah, and that wasn't his birth name. He had a different name when he came into this world. But we don't talk about that. We don't use his birth name. But we use the Tumbler Ridge shooter's birth name. Because we don't, and I think it's simply because he had a passport. Apparently his dad said he had a passport. And on that passport, he used the name Strang. So I think the media wanted to get rid of Strang because it's too close to strange, which was the point I was trying to make in my last video. Garib, yep. I want to do a segment on that in a separate video. Just how we, depending on the circumstances, we don't apply the same rules to our coverages of things. We are very selective in how we handle it. And I think that's something that we need to take a more detailed look at. I'd tell you to get back to woke, but you're the clock now. You're the clock now? Okay? Is it just me? Like, am I too rooted in old style English that I just don't understand what the hell people are talking about anymore? Quebec dumping aluminum into the U.S. and Canadian markets at half the cost because of how subsidized their electricity is. Yeah, it's totally unfair. Leave, baby, leave. All to gain, nothing to lose. Am I getting inundated with bots? I don't know. Hi, Frank. I just tuned in. What are you talking about today? Drumpf, carnage, unitards? I don't like any of those words. I don't think those words make you smart. I don't think those words actually communicate anything valuable. I don't think they're clever. Israel. What does that do? Drumpf. What does that do? Like, it doesn't do anything. It's just juvenile. That's why I don't do it. I don't use the word libtard, Decepticons, for the conservatives. Like, just call things what they are, man. It's not helpful. It's just not helpful. Why don't you ever talk about Talmudic mystical Judaism? How many things do you want me to talk about in a given day? The other thing is, if I open up that bag of worms, you're going to find out that I have a very different take on the origins of Christianity and how important the first 400 years were and how we made a really big mistake at the very beginning by allowing the Church of Rome to gain dominance and become universalism. And quite honestly, I don't think I'm ready to get into that subject. I really don't. Trump is actually his last name. No, it's not. It's Trump. On his legal documents, it's Trump. On his records for the presidency, his name is Trump. His name is Trump. Whether they changed it or not, it doesn't matter. It happened so long ago. Trump is not his last name. It's ridiculous. It's so stupid. Every time I see it, it's just like the cleverest one that I've seen is Mark's Carnage. Mark's Carnage. And I still don't like it because his name is Mark Carney. If we want to be taken as adults in the room and we want to actually talk about these subjects, we just should use big adult words. I teach my children this, I teach my children these things, and then I see people, not you, church, I get what you're doing, but I see people online, and they're actual people, they're not bot accounts, and they have less class and they have less self-control than my 6-year-old does. And I have to wonder why that is. Is it just the internet just brings that out of people? The lack of control, the lack of controlled communication? Lepine was Muslim Islam. It's the one part we do not talk about is the Islamic undertones. It's just the gun, and everybody thinks he was just a Frenchman from Quebec. Okay, so there's one. Maury Zeo Kersey, Maury Zeo Kersey says, Frank, I don't understand why there's not accountability for corruption in the Canadian government. Trudeau not in jail yet. It actually highlights a much bigger issue for me, and that is why nobody. And this goes to the top of the U.S. administration right now. Why is, if we go back to here, let's try something since this is a test. Let's just watch this for a minute. Can you hear this? First off, before we continue, can you actually hear that video? Is it quiet? Can you hear it? Was it good? Can you tell me? No sound? Why is there no sound, man? That doesn't make any sense. There should be lots of sound. Can you hear anything? Anything? Nothing? You can't hear anything? All right. I don't understand why that's not working. I need to hire like a tech guru or something, or actually spend the time. I don't want to take the time to actually figure all this out because I want to spend my time taking in information and trying to parse it. But at any rate, let's just do this. I'll just talk to you about it. This is a hearing where Massey is grilling Bondi. If anybody's following the story, you've probably seen the clip where all the co-conspirators are redacted, but they released the victim list. The thing that I have to wonder is you're seeing all of these high-level resignations of individuals that were either co-conspirators or were involved with Epstein, involved directly in the trafficking or just involved as friends and clients who like to party on his island. And none of them have been charged under the Trump administration, and I think that's a big problem. I think that's because even if you accept that Trump did not commit any of the heinous acts, and you accept that he had a falling out with Epstein, that he was once a friend, but then when he figured out what Epstein was up to, he immediately informed authorities, and there's a good record of that. Doesn't change the fact that he is covering up for one of the most powerful sex trafficking rings that's ever been uncovered. Not a single person's been charged. And it's interesting, too, seeing the blanket of accounts online that would deny his clear-cut ties to Israel. They say that he hated Israel, that Epstein hated Israel, that he had nothing to do with it, as though we can't read the emails and listen to the audio conversations that are included in the files between Ehud Barak and Epstein. Now, who was handling who? Was Epstein handling Ehud, or was Ehud handling Epstein? That's something I guess we can debate. But nobody's been arrested. Nobody's gone to jail. Nobody's been picked up. The Clintons are still out there. Show you the receipts. What receipts would you like me to show you? That's what I'd like to know. Here's just a thought. Maybe we should talk about the hypersexualization of our kids, CBC Kids, for one. We should. You got to keep your kids away from that. They're getting into them all the time. Like, did you read, there was an article actually that came out this morning, and it was on Zero Hedge, I believe. First off, we're pinned right here on Zero Hedge. We have now reached gun person level absurdity. Canada is making headlines for all the wrong reasons because we can't even say what things are anymore because we're playing these language games to try and promote this ideology. But there was an article somewhere. UK's insane new trans guidance says school children as young as 4 can change gender. This is why you got to get your kids out of public school. I don't care where they are. You got to figure out how to homeschool them, even if you have to go into debt. People go into debt all the time to buy university educations they don't need. You know, you could be working and going into a trade and making money while you're working to do something that's going to set you up for life and practical skills that are transferable. People go into debt all the time for that, but they don't want to consider going into debt to actually protect their kids and create the time and space and re-engineer their lives so that they can actually save them from this minefield, which is in Canada, SOGI, which is ongoing in BC, ongoing in Ontario. We model it after this. The Ontario curriculum was written by a convicted, I can't use the word, PDF, and it's still there. Ford was elected on a promise to actually get rid of it and do something about it, and yet it is still there. It's still so-called educating the kids of Ontario. Yeah, it's a huge problem. And there's only one reason you do this. It's the same reason they picked the rainbow. Because even kids that are protected from the influence of the Rainbow Brigade and those who have stolen that symbol, they're attracted to rainbows because they're colorful. You see a rainbow in the sky, it's something special and magical. You draw rainbows, you carry on, and then you find out the rainbow has been reassociated with something else. There's a reason they target the kids. Because in all honesty, young people and kids are everything. If you're into manipulation and you're into being evil, you're one of these elites. You know that the future, you know that the passion, you know that the energy of life is strongest in youth. And the ability to get youth believing myths that are advantageous to your pursuits is so vitally important. That youth energy is everything. That's why they're after it. That's why they got to get their hooks into the kids, because those are the ones that are the most easily manipulated and abused with their time and their money. That energy is priceless. Try to unmute your speaker. My speakers are unmuted, man. When I put sound on, I can hear it in my head, my earpiece. Everything is unmuted on StreamYard's end. Everything is unmuted in XSplit. I have no idea why audio isn't working. System sound. I mean, I guess we can try this. Let's find a video. Can you hear it now? Let me know if you hear that. Can you hear that? Nah, I give up. I'll have to figure out why. I don't know what drives me nuts, man. Anyway, so back to the point. Someone said in the comments that their little girl loved rainbows when they were kids. All kids love rainbows. That's why they pick the rainbow. It's designed to attract children. Kids are the future. They're the future, and they're also the rawest energy. So, it's a common refrain, people looking back on their childhood and thinking, those were the best years of my life, wishing they could go back. I don't really wish I could go back. I think adult humans, would be much better served if they focused on paying that experience forward. So thinking about your childhood, mine wasn't perfect, but thinking about your childhood and its best aspects and building on those and amplifying those for the children that you produce. And so that they have those memories, and then they understand the purpose that, if they get depressed in life or they're broke or whatever the case may be and they feel like they can't get ahead, because I've been there, we've all been there. I've had some really bad times, and you think you can't get ahead and you wish you could return, or you look back longingly on the simplicity of childhood, even if it had a lot of flaws. The best thing you can do is pay that experience forward, which is what I focus on with my kids. But it's such like, you believe, your power to believe and your power to want to dedicate yourself passionately to something is never stronger than it is in youth. Whether you follow a particular ideology or a religious conviction, it's never going to be as strong as it is for kids and teenagers. And as life goes by, and you learn that things are fraudulent, sometimes that breaks you down and you lose that passion. But there are people, not like you and me, that are watching this, that pathologically want to take advantage of that energy and steer that energy in a particular direction and don't care about the damage they leave behind. You know, we talked about this in the last video, how you have these so-called detransitioners, which I say so-called because you can't detransition. Once the damage has been done, it's done. And nobody cares about them. All they care about is getting them on board. All the energy is there. If you want to coach somebody or some kid into so-called transitioning, the energy is there. The help is there. The lawyers are there. The social services are there. The teachers are there. The guidance is there. The law is there saying that no professional can advise you except in terms of affirming your identity. And then when you realize you've made a mistake, no one's there. No one's there to help you. You're just dropped off the edge of a cliff. No one cares because it's all about capturing that energy. It's all about, in a sense, making a market out of children for various causes. And it's terrible. And as parents, it's our duty to protect our children from that programming, wherever it comes from. Pull down volume tab. No, everything's working. I don't know. It's some weird thing. I'll have to check it out. YouTube is censoring the chat. Yeah. Well, YouTube always censors the chat, and I'm not really sure why. Because when I set up filters, which I don't even think I have right now, I might have them on certain words. When I set up filters, the comments that are caught by my filters go to a section in YouTube called Held. And then you go to Held and you can manually approve those comments, which I usually do. It doesn't happen very often because people in the chat don't tend to use those words. And sometimes it's about spam bots trying to shill some crypto or trying to shill some financial planner. Then you got to figure out ways to weed them out because YouTube doesn't do that. They weed out normal comments, but they don't weed out that. And I'm not really sure what the metric is. People have comments disappearing all the time, and it's not me. It's not me that does it. It's a mystery to me as much as to you. Get a haircut. I don't think so, Terry. Are you bald, Terry? I always wonder that when people get angry at my hair, if they're bald. Because you shouldn't be shook about that. That's a solar power plant on the top of your head. It's a chrome dome. It's awesome. I used to not quite bick my head, but I used to shave it down with a razor, real low, because my dad was bald, and I wanted to be in allegiance with him. And then I realized, not really. I wanted to have long hair. My wife actually helped me with that. When I met her, you know how it is. You meet somebody, you fall in love. Personal appearance falls by the wayside because you're busy doing other things. And so my hair got longer, and she realized it was curly, and she said, you should grow that out. I thought, yeah, I had long hair when I was 17. I guess I could grow it out again. I found out I really liked it. The whole metalhead vibe, it's very much for me. And I really regret cutting it off. Look how wingy it is right now. Like we're getting to that curl. And once it comes around and back around again, another 6 months or so, it'll actually be long enough that it won't look sketchy like this. But until then, you're just going to have to put up with it because the long hair is coming back. That's just the way it is. You need to read the protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion and the Toronto Protocols. I've read those, and they're fake. They're fake. They might mimic certain things that happen in the world, for sure, but they're forgeries, and we know where they were forged. I don't need to read them. I need to understand the world as it is. And certain groups have outsized influence, and I have always found it very intriguing that Zionists seem to be able to, the Israeli government seems to be able to call meetings of the Pentagon and walk around the Pentagon as though they own the place. Whenever Netanyahu wants Trump's time, he gets 3 hours of it, some of the most precious time, that the American taxpayers, it's not just the $3 or $4 billion in direct aid that's provided to Israel. It's that in the 12-day war, the American taxpayer spent more shooting down Iranian missiles than the Israeli military spends in an entire year. We're not supposed to talk about the USS Liberty We're not supposed to talk about the leveling of Gaza. And I think my point is, I think there's enough there that I don't need to lean on the protocols with the learned elders of Zion to actually form a criticism. And I also believe that I don't group all Jews into the same category because the majority of Jews aren't Zionists, especially in the United States. And there is, I believe, a majority of Jews in Israel are not Zionists. Like, it just, they came into intense power in the last 10 or 15 years, maybe 20 years. I'd have to get my timeline together because I'm just going off the top of my head. I think there is more than enough without leaning on those documents, which are forgeries. That and quit drugging kids. Sandy Klein says, I was dismayed to see my son's friends getting put on psych meds in elementary school because your children, especially sons, the boys, and this is the biological difference that is inherent between the sexes from birth. Boys are not inclined to sitting to doing desk learning. It takes a lot of training to get them there. So in a classroom setting, the needs of the child don't come first. They often come last. So the needs of the classroom itself come first and the needs of the teacher. So if your kid is being disruptive because they're full of energy and they need to be moving and they need more physical activity and they're being told to sit at a desk and write and rote and they grumble and they carry on and a teacher complains about it because the teacher couldn't care less. Not every teacher's like this, but a lot of teachers are that couldn't care less about your student and their individual needs. The solution is put them on drugs to knock them out, to make them compliant for the needs of the classroom. That's a huge issue. And it shouldn't be that way. And one of the best things that happened to me is when I was young, I think I was in probably grade 1. It was before grade 2, that's for sure. The teachers had advocated that I get put on Ritalin. My parents said no. That's probably one of the best things they've ever done for me, was refusing to put me on drugs. No kid needs that. I have not heard any music yet. Frank's vocals are fine. I'm using a tablet to watch the stream. Yeah, the whole music thing and audio in general has just failed. I don't know why. We'll have to figure that out. I don't know why. It should just work. It all started with Ritalin. Yep, Ritalin, Dexedrine, various drugs that were designed for soldiers that are being fed to your kids. You really shouldn't do it. Just imagine next year, mature minors will be eligible for mental health issues without parental knowledge or consent. I don't know about that. I haven't read that yet, but I can see it being true. I've always made the argument that the moving of the needle when it comes to gender and getting kids to think that they can change genders like clothes at a younger and younger age, and having parents just sit on the sidelines, which is one of the problems. Like, parents don't want to be outspoken about this, so they're just allowing it. And I think that's just, it's so weak. We have a very weak society that doesn't oppose these things, regardless of what consequences you might think are coming to you. I mean, there's nothing more important than kids. Part of it is actually moving the age of consent, not just for MAID, but the age of consent in general down. So there will come a time, and we're probably very close to it right now, where you'll see an old man with gray and white hair holding the hands of a young child, and you won't know if that's a grandfather just walking out for a stroll with their grandkids, or whether that's a literal manifestation of NAMBLA. That's what we're heading to. Because if you can consent as a minor to cross-sex hormones, if you can consent to gender transition, why can't you consent to everything else? It's primarily sexual in nature. I mean, if you can consent to self-mutilation, if you can consent to puberty blockers as a minor, why can't you consent to be in a loving relationship with an elder? And that's what it's really all about. It's about moving the bars of consent. And it's sick. It is sick. Sergey Brin censoring live from Epstein Island. Well, Epstein Island has been shut down. It's been painted over. It's been paved over. It's been ripped apart. And from what I understand, they're trying to sell it off, or they sold it off. So that's all done. That's all gone now. We don't have that anymore. We have the Epstein files and the people who actually want to get to the bottom of it. I guess I'm just going to go right to the bottom of chat. Any thoughts on recent Antifa France incident? More of the same, man. More of the same. There's one side out of control. One side, primarily one side, that's causing all of the violence. And, you know, our political leaders tend to just make excuses for it. And I don't know how much longer it can go on. Like, something's going to snap. Asmongold said as much. It's interesting watching Asmongold go from a Warcraft streamer to somebody who's actually very dialed in on the Epstein files. I mean, you want to talk about other things, the references to beef jerky, how many pounds of beef jerky. I mean, we don't know what that means. The references to pizza and pizza parties and hot dogs. Looks like the Pizzagate people were right. I remember saying at the time that it was about a lot more than Comet Ping Pong. Comet Pizza, whatever the hell it was called. Especially when you have FBI documents that basically spell out the code words that go along with that sick part of society. And then you find people in the Podesta emails are long forgotten too. I spent a lot of time going through that stuff. You know, you want to pour, metaphorically, you want to pour bleach in your eyes and all over your brain to try and erase what you remember. Podesta's art alone would be enough to land regular pleb people in jail. He's still out there. Why hasn't Donald Trump charged anybody? Why hasn't Bondi charged anybody? Why are they calling Bill and Hillary Clinton before Congress instead of locking them up and putting them in jail? Why is Bill Gates still out there? Why are people being allowed to resign and not being arrested? Why is Trump covering it up? Even if he's not guilty, he's covering. And I think it's because it's the intelligence network and it takes in the entire elite. You know, we're this close. We're this close to something real being done. And it's actually being opposed by the administration that's supposed to be rolling it out. Why haven't they arrested anybody? That's the only question that matters. And people will say, you know, I've heard it said that we don't know everything out here. We don't know what he knows. We don't know what he's trying to do. So we should all just, you know, be patient. Trust the plan. There's only one thing that you can do in response to human trafficking and the trafficking of minors, and that is seek maximal justice. There's no excuse. I don't care about your foreign policy objectives. I don't care if you're flipping the table on blackmail and you're using that information to try and blackmail your adversaries, even as the midterms are approaching. And the administration, once again, ties its fate to the value of the Dow and the value of the NASDAQ and the S&P, which I think is a fatal big mistake because they are due for a correction. And money printing might be able to stave it off, but when you're watching your purchasing power evaporate in real time, again, I think we're approaching the tail end of the calm before the storm, but I think the spring, summer, and fall are going to be crazy in 2026 for the speed of developments. That was on placards in Denmark 10 years ago. An old man with a young girl, and the text was grandpa or PDF. Yep, that's what we're coming to. That's what it's all about. It really is all about that. If you can consent to irreversibly change your body and you're not even an adult yet, then you can consent to sexual relations. That's ultimately where this goes. Thoughts on recent antifa? Okay, I got it. You can't handle the truth. Rigged outcome. Give me the truth. Give me the truth, sir. Tell me. Tell me with your wisdom. What is the truth? collectivist goons, satanic, absolutely. These people believe in God and believe in Jesus more than everybody else. Not everybody else. They believe in more than most people because they dedicate themselves to the destruction of that religion, the destruction of that story. In iconography everywhere, they signal their opposition. And they might believe, but they hate, and they show you. You know, when you take the, I think it was the Olympics opening ceremony, the last ones, and they did the mock Last Supper with every kind of depravity that you can imagine. You better believe that the people who orchestrate that believe in something beyond us. That's one of the greatest arguments, in fact, for creation or something divine going on in the world. And I don't think any human can really say. Maybe these people can. The biggest argument is the people who run the world, these evil people, believe in it. They believe in it. They engineer their lives around it. Eyes Wide Shut wasn't just a movie. It was peeling back the curtain on what's actually going on. And I mean Epstein, same thing. If you actually read the emails, you actually go through it all, you'll realize that Eyes Wide Shut is just peeling open the curtain on what's legitimately going on behind the scenes. And for whatever reason, the Trump administration is not pursuing justice, is not pursuing criminal charges. And I'm supposed to hate Massey up on screen, even though we can't listen to the clip. I'm supposed to hate Massey, and I can't do that. One thing I do hate, though, is I was watching a Democrat. I can't remember which one. And he was talking about this. And this is bad enough on its own. You don't need to exaggerate this. You don't need catchy headlines. On its own, the information itself is absolutely horrendous. And the guy still felt the need to exaggerate what's in here. Why do people do that? It's like, you know, you have a rally, right? You have a protest. You have a Freedom Light convoy, or you have a protest on Parliament Hill. Or you have a rally for Polyev, or you have a rally for Mark Carney. And it is common practice to artificially inflate the numbers in attendance. Why do people do that? Like, I guess there's a psychological component that the larger the crowd, the more endorsement it actually is. Why can't we just tell the truth about attendance? I remember this was one of my problems when I ran in the federal campaign in 2019. You know, you take a rally that's got 400 or 500 people and it automatically becomes 2,000. It's like, why do that? Just say well attended. Like, people can count. And then when you get caught in the lie, you get called out and it creates all this drama. And if people just focused on telling the truth, because you're going to, even if you're just focused on trying to tell the truth and be factual, you're going to be wrong often enough as it is. Instead of having to feel like you got to lie and inflate and exaggerate all the time, just try to tell the truth of things and be accurate. Because there's a great big vacuum that's unfilled for people to do just that. The world needs a lot more of that. Jane Sam says, "Good afternoon, Frank and friends. Don't forget the enemies. Got to say hi to them too. Strong men make good times make weak men make bad times. To get to, that's the name. To get to. I don't know how to get to. Said that. Some files are still redacted. A lot of files are still redacted, especially when it comes to the co-conspirators. They're hiding the co-conspirators. Bondi is hiding the co-conspirators. Why? You release the victim names, but you hide the co-conspirators. Like, it's so easy to do. They should just do it. When can we call out the fake Conservative Party and their weakness and cowardice? Well, let's do some of that right now, Silver Stacker. Let's talk about the CPC and how there's this vacuum in Canada. We talk about vacuums. There's a vacuum when it comes to championing common sense. These are the people that the entire House voted for C4. C16, all of these bills, they did it because they're weak. And the majority of Canadian public opinion, you want to talk about silent majorities? There's a silent majority in Canada of people who believe that childhood should be sacred, that it's sacrosanct, that it should be protected from the influences of the perverse. And they're not well represented. You know, you need a champion. The vacuum requires a champion. Because if a conservative leader, Polyev, let's say, were to actually say things the right way and advocate for the sanctity of childhood. Like, look, here's a way that you can do it. We created childhood, and we did it after the Second World War, because childhood before that was very short. As soon as you were able, at the age of 5 or 6 or 7, you were set to work. Whether it's, in the field, in the coal mines, whipping was very common. Shaping children in line through martial punishment, getting them to work at the earliest possible age was pretty well the norm. And then for whatever reason, we decided that wasn't working, and we created childhood. We created this space for children to flower and to use their imaginations and to play and to run around and do children things. And I think that's a very beautiful creation. And we're eroding it. We're eroding it for a different purpose. We're eroding it from a different angle. And I think if you had a champion that just framed it, that's just one way that you can frame it, that we need to protect the sanctity of childhood, that you have this unfolding biological miracle known as life. You start as an infinitesimally small, smaller than a grain of salt thing, and all the information that makes you what you are is contained within those 2 cells that start you, and it will unfold. For the vast majority of people, it will unfold in a natural way, and it will carry on into your 20s as you unfold and you mature. And there should be somebody that advocates for just allowing that process to play out before you make irreversible changes to your body because of what some ideological activists want to do to you. And why is there no champion saying that? It's not just about keeping men out of women's sports. It's about so much more than that. The Conservative Party under Polyev, they've said some things, but nothing truly inspirational. And I think there's a silent majority of Canadians that totally agree. They don't want to talk about it publicly because Transtifa and the leftist activists are so outspoken, and they contain within themselves outsized power and clearly a capacity for violence in many cases, not all cases, but in many cases, a capacity for violence. So people don't want to speak about it openly. Fine. Get a champion. Get a political champion that has protection and a platform to talk about those things, and then in the privacy of the ballot box, they would vote for that champion. But they don't even try it, man. Like, even you want to take another issue like abortion and potentially banning in Canada late-term abortion or having some kind of abortion law. Something that addresses the fact that, and this is tragic, you're pregnant. You're a pregnant woman because men can't get pregnant. You're a pregnant woman. You're 6 months in, 7 months in, 8 months in. You're driving your car and you get smashed into by a drunk driver. And the drunk driver kills your baby in your womb. There's no separate charge for that. It's not homicide. It's not manslaughter. It's nothing. Why is it nothing? Because we have to protect abortion rights. Why isn't there a champion talking about that problem? Maybe it could be said to be an aggravating circumstances in whatever charges might arise, careless driving or whatever the case may be. But it's not a separate thing on its own, because that life, and it is life. I've had 2. I haven't had 2. My wife has had 2, but I've interacted with both of those babies in the womb. They had distinct personalities. They had distinct reactions to the music we played, to the words we said. They reacted to my voice. They reacted to her voice, and they did it in an individual way. I was just talking last night with my daughter was there and my wife was there, but we were talking about the fact my daughter's very energetic, very boisterous, very acrobatic, very strong. And she's been that way since before she was born. She was strong in the womb, and she was very acrobatic in the womb, whereas my son, for a period, at least a period while he was in the womb, was very mellow. It was almost like he was meditating in there, and it kind of matches his personality outside of it. He's a very thoughtful boy. They're like, the idea that a child in the womb is not alive is morally aberrant, and I find it interesting, too, that there are so many people that are sitting in the Conservative caucus right here in Canada that share some form of that belief, and they're muzzled by the party. And they don't want to speak out, because if they speak out, the party will kick them out because they're going off script, they're going off message. I don't even need this thing in anymore. Sound ain't working. It's, there's, and you know, you want to look at another thing. You want to talk about the weakness of conservatives. There's a whole opportunity, a great big opportunity to explain to the Canadian public that the Liberal Party completely broke our relationship with the United States and that it is necessary for Canada's survival to fix that relationship. But they don't do that. They adopt language which is very similar to the elbows up nonsense. They blame Donald Trump for everything. And, you know, on this channel, we talk about Donald Trump. We criticize Donald Trump. There's a way that you can do that without completely dismissing the American relationship and the trade relationship. I liked, Pierre said in one of his recent speeches, he said that something to the effect of, you know, Trump's here for a while, but America will remain. And that's a good start. But taking some ownership of the damaged relationship that we have with the Americans would be even better. That's something we need to do. So there's a lot of different ways the CPC is still quite weak and afraid to actually fight for those values. And, you know, I've had it said to me that Western Canadians are the problem. I did a video about that recently, that Western conservatives are the problem because you can't sell it in the East. And so even though the Western conservative gives the CPC its treasure, gives the CPC its caucus, gives the CPC its support, they go East and they turn into milquetoast nonsense because they're afraid to fight. Because if they actually fought for things, they would lose. And so they focus on winning. And they do it by trying to cater to the center. And that hasn't exactly led to winning, but they think it's a winning strategy. It's so close. Instead of building a constituency of waking people up and using our platform to create positive change in Canada and reel things back, they don't. They try to cater to the center. And if they do that, if they cater to the center, can you believe that they'll actually act in your behalf once they get in office? I still think we should, like, if we're going to do a federal election, I think you got to give the Conservative Party a chance. I think you got to hope that they get a chance. They got to form a government, and you got to see what they do with it. Because until that happens, there's a huge segment of the Canadian population that is going to believe that that's a viable option. They need to demonstrate it's a viable option, or it's not a demonstrable viable option before you can create the room for something else to grow. And in the meantime, I think we should keep working on separatism, because it's clear there's a large demographic. It's not everybody, but there's a large demographic in the East, and there's a large demographic within the Conservative Party, the Eastern Conservative, so to speak, that really thinks Western values are objectionable. And if that's the case, after giving your treasure, your time, generating the caucus, giving the Conservatives what they have in the House, and they look down on you with scorn, well, maybe it is time to think about doing something different. And the other part of that is, more broadly, is that this Westminster system, which Pierre Poilievre says we should take all kinds of pride in and be proud of our democratic traditions. It's not a democracy, it's a constitutional monarchy. The king is still the head of state. We've seen how Mark Carney can get parachuted into this country, can go through what I would consider to be, in my opinion, a fraudulent leadership process in the Liberal Party, can become prime minister, and then can prorogue Parliament and continue to spend hundreds of billions of dollars and create orders in council which can suspend laws or create new rules, all without Parliament. There's an unelected Senate, which gets sent home as well. I mean, you know, I've been through all this before. You should want better for the citizens who pay so much, the overtaxed people who pay so much to support this Westminster system, which is everything we do, all of the socialism, the healthcare programs, the education programs, everything we do emanates from this Westminster system. And Canadian producers pay a heavy price for that system. And you should want better, because better exists. There's better models out there that exist. But you don't have a single champion talking about the fact that maybe Confederation sucks for the citizen. So there's a lot of different ways. There's a lot of different space. There's a lot of vacuum in politics that somebody with some foresight could fill if they just had the fight to do it. You know, it might cost you in your polling numbers for a little while at first, But if you stuck with it, you're going to build a bigger constituency. All right, we've lost track of the chat. You are the only one, Frank says. John Bacco, be careful. Never put anybody up on a pedestal. Not even me. Not even me. Frank for Prime Minister, stop trying to give me a job. There's no way I'd ever... Do you know how, I remember when I ran in 2019, I had conservative volunteers coming up to me, and they're just like, you're great. Why didn't you run for the Conservative Party of Canada? Because the Conservative Party of Canada does not want people like me. I'm filtered out. The party system in this country, including the alternative parties, before that gets brought up in the chat, it's all a filtration system to make sure that nobody genuine ever gets in there. It would have to start from within. So it would have to be people that have already made it through the filter system and are already there. It would have to be a leadership position, somebody running for leader, because you do get a glimmer of it. Whenever there's a leadership race, you get a glimmer of something else. And it often gets swallowed back up by the morass. You almost need a rebel within, because an outsider can't get in. The way is barred. Canada's government is mob ruled. That's ruled by the king. It's ruled by cabinet. It's ruled by Mark Carney. They don't even need parliament. The parties pick who gets to sit. And before they get to sit, before they even get to run, it's agreed upon who they're going to make the government, because the parliament is not government. So you compete in the election. You stay on point. They say, you always see it written. Canada doesn't elect its prime ministers, and yet the entire election cycle is made to be about who is leading the parties. Because when you run as a candidate, who you're going to pick to be prime minister. It's known beforehand. And most of the cabinet picks are already known beforehand or anticipated. And once the prime minister is picked, once the cabinet is installed, parliament's not needed anymore, except for passing legislation, which you will do. You will vote how you're told to vote, or you'll get kicked out of caucus. And even then, Parliament can be sent home, and whatever government, the cabinet and the prime minister, being the government, not Parliament, can just rule through the Governor General's office. This system sucks, folks. It's terrible. The Charter of Rights and Freedoms. You don't have any rights, you don't have any freedoms, because if you did, the government wouldn't be able to suspend them. Why isn't the Trudeau government facing charges? Because if the Charter is so sacrosanct, if it's the top of the food chain in terms of the criminal code and your rights, why can you suspend the Charter, be found to have wrongly done so, and just go off into the sunset banging Kate Perry? It's not right. Your Charter rights aren't real. And you don't have anybody in politics telling you. In fact, the leader of the Conservative Party is telling you you have a strong and proud tradition. The Westminster system is something that we all value. Do we? Do we really value that? Or would we be better served by a constitutional republic, if not made up of Canada, made up of the provinces that wanted to go along with it? I think that's where your energy should be focused right now, because, man, Canada ain't it. The system that is Canada is not it. Frank, you have to run again. I don't know if I do have to run again. I live in Saskatchewan now. I've been here for 4 years. Do you not think it's a little ostentatious? Do you not think it's a little self-inflating for me to insert myself into provincial politics or insert myself into the federal politics of Saskatchewan, or to get more involved with the Saskatchewan Prosperity Project as somebody who just got here? The majority of people, I got to admit, the people that are here, they would love to see that. But there's a few who have reminded me that I'm an outsider. And the few who have reminded me of that, of those few, there's at least two who are highly placed, who have basically said, you're not really one of us. It sticks in my craw, it sticks in my mind. And I'm not really sure what to do about that yet. I'm not really sure what to do about that. Frank, his eyes wide open, refreshing in a young person. You think I'm young? At 45, you think I'm young? I'll take it. Vancouver guy. With the constant weather reports, generally in the comment section, letting me know what the weather is in Vancouver, because I'll tell you, if it wasn't for you, I would not know what the hell is happening on Vancouver, or in Vancouver at all. And I suppose, in a way, I am still young at 45. There's a lot of life ahead. It's actually kind of funny because I was comparing. I always do this when I'm reading through historical biographies, whether it's Sigmund Freud, which is another thing I'm studying right now, his cover-up of, oh, guys, that's a deep rabbit hole, that the roots of psychotherapy were based on saying that anybody that claimed that they were abused and molested as children were just lying, that it was fantasy. And I mean, one of the treatments was to operate on you, and it's a whole thing. But anyway, at 45, you can honestly say that things are almost just beginning if you get to live long enough. Even if we had a magic wand, it will take a generation to fix. We have an entire generation who is being indoctrinated from this Marxist ideology. If I expanded on that, we would run up against the fact that there's so many problems. Birth rate's the primary problem. I see a lot of people running around talking about replacement immigration, and none of them have any children. And that's the base of the pyramid. You need at least 2, and every 10th couple has to have 3. And then they face the gamut of school, where they're being disrupted by some of these ideologies that are very dangerous. All you got to do is drive around, go into town, look around at people. Understand that if you got everybody on the same page, they're not physically on the same page. Myself included. I mean, I have work to do, and I have been proceeding to work on that in a much more focused way. We have a lot of hurdles to overcome to get it back. And if politically, whether it's independence, separation, these ideas, if they were to gain headway, there's certain things that we don't have to address right away. But the demographic shortage is something that has to be reckoned with, either by having more children, or the other side of the coin is that Canada was very prosperous when we had 11 million people living in the entire country. We were doing just fine at a lower population. So there would have to be an admission that we can actually prosper as the population declines. And I don't think I've heard anybody spelling out that case. I think about it a lot. But your real estate values would plummet. I mean, the price of housing would collapse. A lot of houses would sit empty as population declined, right? And since we're committed to perpetual growth as the solution to everything, you want to talk about an idea that's buried under a bunch of other ideas? Like, before you go to that idea, there's a bunch of other ideas that aren't being articulated that could be articulated before you get down to that layer. It's kind of buried. It's like if you have a pyramid made out of champagne glasses, and you start trying to take that pyramid apart from the middle, all of the champagne glasses are going to collapse down and break. You got to start from the top and kind of work your way down to peel apart. And that's kind of the nature of the problem. You have to go about it from the top down, right? Somebody's plugging Chat GPT. I don't know why. Government is a process of acclimation to corruption. That's one way to put it, Mr. Doom. I think the party system is a process of, it's definitely filtration. So as you try and as you get involved, you're going to get filtered out automatically by the party system before you get to the level of actually sitting and representing. And it might not be so true, say in a provincial legislature like what you have in Saskatchewan or what you have in Alberta. It's quite possible to be very outspoken and become an MLA. But at the federal level, you have to put, if you want to be there, you have to put a lot of your views to bed. Or you have to run as an independent, and then you face what I faced. You go on the election trail, you go to all the debates, you bury everybody that you're debating with. You go to a David Suzuki-sponsored environmental debate, and you bury the carbon con, and you get thunderous applause for doing so. And then after you're done and you go and you start hobnobbing and shaking hands in the crowd, everybody says, it's a shame you're not running for one of the parties, because if you were, I could vote for you, but I can't vote for you because I might vote split. You can hear that hundreds of times, and you realize that it's futile, because whether you agree with the psychosis and the psychology of it or not, that's the way people think. Conservatives are better than liberals. Liberals are better than conservatives. I'm at the point of thinking the conservatives haven't been tried in 11, 12 years. And until you try them and see what they can do, and until you break their image, you don't have an opportunity for something else to arise. And it's the same with the Liberal Party. But the issue with the Liberal Party is like how well entrenched the big red machine is in the public mind. They have managed to install a central banking Goldman Sachs man who has worked for every single enemy that I was when I was 20 years old or 19 or a teenager. All of the great big banking cartel enemies, the tentacles of central banking, the people that we knew were bad. Whether you were on the left or you were just a thinking person, an independent mind, you knew these things were bad. The big red machine has managed to convince people that Mark Carney is the savior. Heading to central banks, working for Goldman Sachs, being integral to the fire sale, buying for U.S. banks of Russian assets in the 90s. Like, there's a long story there. And they've embraced him as a savior and a hero. And whether you believe all the polls or not, it doesn't matter. The liberal base is rock solid behind this guy. And I always knew the big red machine was powerful. I've been talking about it for years. But this blew my mind, how ready they are to embrace anything he does. The guy's cutting the public service. No one whines about it. The guy's talking about austerity. Nobody protests it. The guy is telling you you're going to have service cuts and you're going to have higher taxes. No one cares. He's, by cutting immigration, that's another thing. Talking about canceling permanent residency, sending people home. It may not be in the numbers of the timeline or whatever. It might not make people happy, but they're talking about it and doing it. Where's the Conservative Party? They got Michelle Rempel out there saying that the Liberals have gone too far on immigration, that they're really worried about the Liberals using the power that they have to cancel permanent residency. That needs to be reexamined. And I'm thinking, why is the Conservative Party taking a immigration stance at a time like this? You want to solve the housing crisis. You just have to decrease the population, and it's done. The issue there is, and this is an issue that I think eventually the Carney Liberals might have to face, is that if you devastate the real estate market, which is ongoing, it's a process that's ongoing. If you devastate it enough, you're going to see boomers lose their retirement plans. Because for the last 2 decades, buying real estate and buying a house and paying it off and improving it was a great way to save money because you were getting guaranteed gains just about every single year. That is over. I don't think it's really sunk in for people. They think, and the CBC is blaring this. I saw a video the other day, and it was the CBC saying that the bottom's in. Now's the time to buy. They interviewed 2 real estate agents or representatives. I don't know if it was real estate agents. They were probably real estate agents, but they might have been representing larger real estate organizations. And they're saying now's the time to buy. If you don't buy now, you're going to regret it because it's going to bounce and everybody's going to be back to making all kinds of money. It's bollocks. It's not happening. It's just not going to happen. Real estate values, especially in the metro centers, are going to continue to decline. There's going to be places in the country that buck those trends. That's a separate conversation as to why I think it's going to buck those trends. And it has to do with economic prosperity and the prospects for those areas because they make things, they produce things, they generate taxpayers, they generate revenue. I think those markets might bounce. But Vancouver, Toronto, those values are going down and buyers are disappearing. And it's not going to change. It's only getting started. The mortgage renewals that are going to most impact people will transpire over the entire course of 2026. The people who got in at 1.x% are going to be re-signing at 4.5%, who knows? Because rates could go up just as likely as they could go down. And when you have somebody that bought in 21 or 22, they somehow managed to pay $2 million or $1 million for a property, and that same property is taking a 35 or 40% haircut in a matter of 5 years, you're underwater on your mortgage. And the bank doesn't care. They're not going to foreclose on you because your house isn't worth what you bought it for. They're going to be happy as long as you keep making the payments. But you're going to pay a lot more, and now you can't get out. Because if you sell the house, if the bank lets you sell the house, that's another factor. If you sell the house, you come out of it short hundreds of thousands of dollars. There's a lot of people who are in that boat already, and there's a lot of people who are in denial. They're just putting one foot in front of the other, trying to get through their day, And their renewals are coming up in April, they're coming up in June, they're coming up in July, they're coming up in August. Some are coming up in 27, but the lion's share is happening in 26. The pain's only begun. That's my opinion. And so eventually, I think that might take a bite out of the big red machine. But will that happen before they get a majority through an election? Because like I said, I think they want one. I think they want a majority. They need the optics of a majority to do some of the things they're going to do. Redirecting pension funds, I think they're going to do that. The pension funds are a great big bag of loot in this country that the government can very easily get their hands into. It's so easy. Starting with the CPP. The CPP is only protected by legislation, folks. I keep getting pushback on that when they're, no, you can't change the CPP without a 2/3 majority of the Senate and 7 of the provinces voting, and they cite constitutional nonsense. They don't realize that it's not enshrined in the Constitution, that the act that governs the CPP is just a piece of legislation with constitutional language sprinkled in. A simple act of Parliament can change how the CPP is handled, can change anything about it. And the other thing, the other precedent that's been set up is Mark Carney, if you recall, with his fake executive order signings, which are totally fake, with a gavel on the desk, and he's got his little red folio, and he's signing documents, and everybody's applauding, of no force and effect, completely optical, the big red machine hypnotizing everybody, with liberal supporters everywhere applauding it, like, finally, we got a, daddy's back. Mark Carney as daddy. When he was doing all that stuff, in the midst of all that, he was also signing actual orders through the Governor General's office where he got to suspend the carbon tax, for instance, before coming back later with an act of Parliament and getting rid of it. But he did it with the stroke of a pen. And through orders in council governing firearms, they've demonstrated that at the stroke of a pen, without Parliament even sitting, they can create and suspend law wherever they want. If the right emergency comes along, and I believe it might be coming, I don't really want to parse again how this all might flesh out with Carney working for Europe or working with the United States or working with China, or maybe they're all working together towards the same objectives. Either way, I think there's an economic problem coming anytime. Spring, summer, fall, 2026, I think the wheels come off the bus. And if there's the right economic catalyst, if there's the right emergency, then Mark Carney can wield the power of the pen through the Governor General's office and pretty much do whatever the hell he wants. And one of the things that's within his power, I'm not saying he's going to do it, but within his power, is to redirect how the CPP spends its money and where they invest. He can mandate at any time that they spend more of their money investing in Canada in the projects that benefit Brookfield and other companies. He can direct them to do that. He can also suspend the act and propose another act. Like, it's within his power to harvest the pension funds. I'm not saying he's going to do it, but I'm not saying he's not going to do it. I'm just saying it's within his ability to do so. Lewis Payne says, run on principle as an independent. I don't know, maybe one day. I don't like to lose. And when I ran last time, I was willing to lose. I was willing to lose twice, and I thought maybe I could win the third time. I did not think I could win the first time. Didn't think I could win the second time, but by the third crack, I thought I could. Turned out, the people I was running with and weren't serious. They didn't actually want to win. I didn't know that at the time. It was worth a shot. I had my doubts the entire time. It was worth a shot. Didn't work. I'm not willing to run and lose. I don't like losing. So an independent run is easier to imagine working in Saskatchewan than it is in working in Ontario. It's also easy for me to think that a provincial movement, if you focused on a few ridings instead of trying to run a province-wide campaign, if you just focus on 1 or 2 or 3 ridings to get your foot in the door, you could do it federally too. I was an advocate for that in 2019. Just a few key ridings. Focus on that, get your foot back in the door, but nobody listened to me. Instead, they try to run national or they try to run province-wide campaigns. They dilute their support, they dilute their resources, and, any momentum doesn't get off the ground. It flags and it falters. You've seen that here in Saskatchewan with first the Buffalo Party, and then you've seen it with Sask United. Both ideas that had merit and value, but divided the focus, so they didn't get off the ground. And it's sad because, there could be, there's a way that you could apply strategic pressure if you concentrated your focus. Jane Sam says, I just love Frank. Well, thank you. Canada ran fine when Trudeau prorogued. That's exactly the point. You send Parliament home, and the bureaucracy continues to rule, and the cabinet continues to rule, and they can go and they can make trade arrangements, and they can enter into negotiations, and they can suspend trade deals, and they can do whatever they want. Well, the people you elect aren't there. That's how little Parliament matters. That's how little the Senate matters. We need to be proud of our Westminster tradition. Sure we do. I call them the alphabet cult. Very cult-like properties. Authoritarian democracy. Not even that. It's authoritarian monarchy with the veneer of a parliamentary system slapped on top of it, where the people who are there understand that they're there to rubber stamp the ideas of the government. So it's like the government has an idea. They want to pass an act. They want to propose a piece of legislation. They want to redirect the CPP. So they go to one of the backbench MPs and they say, draft this bill. And so the backbencher, looking for a bit of sunlight, looking for the spotlight, drafts the bill they were directed to by the government, which is the cabinet. And then they propose it. Everybody forgets their name. Nobody cares who they are, but they get their moment. They stand up in Parliament. They propose their bill, and it moves through. But they got their direction from on high. And if they didn't follow that direction, and if they didn't obey the marching orders, they would be kicked out of the process, and there isn't a single parliamentarian that can honestly deny that, though you will find some that will deny it all the same. Good question. Why aren't people being charged? Yeah, man. Why aren't people being charged? Why isn't Bill Gates being charged? Why isn't Hillary Clinton being charged? Why isn't anybody involved being charged? Why aren't they being called in and questioned officially? Why were we being gaslit? There's going back to the whole Epstein thing, being gaslit by Kash Patel and Bondi, being gaslit by the president, by the way, who actually said, are we still talking about that sicko? It's time we move on. He actually reiterated that point, I think it was just last week. Actually, I think it was this week. We reiterated, it's time to move on. Let's talk about gas prices. Let's talk about electricity prices. Let's talk about almost getting rid of the trade surplus. Let's talk about real things. And it's like, there's nothing more real than Epstein. Why are we being gaslit? They campaigned on this. They campaigned on getting to the bottom of it and putting the people who were involved in jail. And then they flipped their script in office. And I, for one, I'm not political enough. I'm not partisan enough to just ignore that. Most of the influencer class can just pretend. I'm not capable of doing that. Hey, Campsites says, can the FOIA the judge's decision to return the guns to the mother of the shooter? Was there any sort of evaluation done to the child, or did the judge just outright believe the lies? This might be an aside to the point, but there's a great big magic wand that you can wave that turns, one of my commenters said, turns scrutiny into bigotry, and that is to identify as trans. The second you claim that, scrutiny goes out the window, and any scrutiny is redefined as bigotry. And I thought, that's succinct. Scrutiny becomes bigotry. That's succinct, and that gets to the point. The bureaucracy, because of the law, C-16, C-4, the bureaucracy and the professional class are required to affirm, and if they speak out in protest, they can expect to face professional consequences. So everybody is afraid to call this what it is from a professional level. So politicians don't want to talk about it. The RCMP doesn't want to talk about it. They don't want to apply the law to people who identify in such a way. So to the point, there's enough law on the books. There's enough regulation on the books already that this should have been stopped, and it wasn't. And I I would argue, it's my opinion, that it wasn't stopped because you had somebody at the heart of it that was trans. And we just can't have scrutiny of trans people. We must just accept and feed in. And we know I'm not going to do that. But I don't speak from a position of authority. What country is a safe haven in today's world? Good question. Good question. I don't have the answer. I live in the safest place I think there is in Canada. I think I live in the best province that there is in Canada, and we've got problems here too. If I left the country, because I get asked that all the time, if you had to leave Canada, where would you go? I don't have a good answer. I've thought about it a lot. Thought about it for the future of my children. If I left, I don't want to. I still have a Canadian flag in the background. If I left, where would I go? I don't have an answer. That's a tough question to answer in today's world. If Elizabeth May could get elected. Oh, man. I'm going to give you the point on that, Lewis. I'm going to give you the point on that. I might disagree, but you get the point. She keeps getting elected. War will unite us. It used to. War is just not as workable in the world we live in as it used to be. War used to solve a lot of problems, whether you like it or not. I'm not a pro-war guy, but you study history and you understand that bloodletting is actually how a lot of problems used to get solved sociologically, and we can't do it because of the presence of nuclear weapons. It can't proceed the way it used to. We've broken the normal cycle of war and peace. And now, if we do it again, if the great powers go to war, it's hard to imagine a world where it doesn't go nuclear. And that's it. That's the end of civilization. So it's tricky. It's really tricky. I think is the Tumblr Ridge Shooters alternative YouTube account, if they haven't already found one. What do you think, Frank? I don't know. I think there's enough out there that's been verified that's damaging enough on its own. We know just about everything. Those of us in the alternative space know just about everything there is to know at this point that you need to know. Anybody that's following mainstream media doesn't know anything. I mean, I covered in the last video how CBC covered the social media, and instead of quoting the Roblox thing that I showed at the beginning of this live stream or quoting any of the stuff they could have farmed off of the perpetrator's social media, they decided to quote the mother who said that her son had an interest in hunting and outdoor activities. That's the social media quote that they gave us. And you can imagine why. You can imagine why, because the legislation targets hunters, it targets legal, lawful gun owners, it doesn't target problems. I remember feeling pretty old at 45, 20 years ago. Things change, man. I remember when I was a young man, I was 23 or so. I was sitting in an apartment in a place called Port Hope, Ontario. And we were all just hanging out, rocking a few beers, doing whatever we were doing. And there was a guy who stopped by. I believe his name was Lucas. He was 37. Good-looking guy. Came in, sat down. We were just shooting the breeze. And we the 23-year-olds, we were talking about aches and pains, and he's just like, you guys don't know nothing. You don't, like, it changes as you get older, and you kind of sloughed it off, because to you at that age, you're just like, oh, my aches and pains are pretty real. Well, things change. Susan Stack says, you are an insider now. Your family life has a vested interest in the community and province. You are very right about that, Suzanne. Sorry, I might have called you Susan. That's Suzanne. Very clearly Suzanne. You're very right about that. And, like I said, it's kind of a thing I roll around in my head, what exactly it is I can do. A decision could come at any moment. I don't think I'm ready yet to present in that way, but I could change my mind at any point. I'm very far behind in the chat. Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay, this isn't live. I'm gone. It's totally live, Campsite. I don't even know what you're talking about. This is as live as it gets. It just takes forever to get through the comments. I end up missing a bunch. I try to answer them all, and I can't. Hi, Frank. I like this live chats. And 1/4 of our population has been flooded in over the last 10 years, and they do not have the cultural compatibility at all. So that's a whole other thing. Catherine, I'm going to call that Catherine Gagney. Hello to you. I recognize you from the comments. You're frequently there. I've had 2 kids, hubby 6, and we have 1 together. That's 9 total. Very productive. You've done your part. I can tell you where I live and the circles that my family travels in, we feel like the odd couple out because we've only got 2. Demographics are much healthier up here than they are in other places. I mean, I think I know 1 person who has 1 child. Everybody else has 3 or more. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful in every way you can possibly imagine. I love it. Good people with good values trying to create their life draft together to hold on to the value systems, to hold on to the morals and do something different. And it's a great place to be if that's what you want to do. Great place to raise kids. It's nice to hang out with Canadians who have their eyes open, for sure. I'm sorry I can't keep up with the chat. It's just going to get worse as time goes by because people do keep subscribing. View count keeps going up. So it's going to be even harder to just keep tracking. Like, I always get asked, enable super chats so that like things can stand out. And I don't want to. You might have heard the spiel before, but it's just not something I want to do. I want to treat the chat as one whole thing because the whole community's there and not everybody has the ability to do that. And then the other thing too is you get bagged GST on super chats. You got to pay that GST and it's like, I don't like paying it any more than I like sitting through ads. And part of getting the super chats is you got to allow YouTube to put ads on your cast. And I don't really want to do that. I will tell you, because I should do this once in a while, that instead of super chats and instead of sponsorships, instead of everything else, all I have is a website, frankvaughn.com or frankvaughn.ca. You can click that donate link, and that's how you can make sure I have the time to do what I'm going to do. Because if I don't at least have that, then I can't spend the time reading the books, can't spend the time making the videos. I can't spend the time developing this professionally because I still consider myself kind of a noob at it because I've dipped in, dipped out. But I want to stick with it this time. That's how you do it. You don't go through YouTube. They don't take their cut because that's the other thing with super chats. YouTube's taking 30-odd% of it. It's the same when you monetize on X. If you want to do a subscription model on X, they're into you for 30%, I believe, on the first 50,000, which is an enormous sum of money when it comes to subscriptions. And then they're on into you for 10% for the rest of your life. I would much rather pay YouTube for views. I'd rather advertise through them. I'd rather advertise on Twitter if I had the budget than actually have them putting ads in my content. So at any rate, that's how you can do that. We don't have super chats. We just have pleb chat. And as a fellow pleb, I like pleb chat. Pleb chat suits me fine. Thank you, Mrs. Frank, for letting you live stream. Yeah, I mean, she's my biggest supporter, man. She spearheads the education of my kids. She's right there. Like, she's willing to take the risk. She's always believed in this part of my life. And we worked really hard together when we were farming. We put in a lot of time sweating and bleeding and struggling and loving it. We were having coffee and tea in bed this morning. The kids are in the hallway making noise and playing, and we were just reminiscing as we often do. We talk so much And I don't know how it works because we talk every day. We have conversations every single day. And you think people run out of things to talk about. Well, somehow we talk about the same things. Oftentimes we roll them back over and we don't get sick of each other. And we were talking about that this morning and how we were revisiting the challenges of the way that we farmed. And her conclusion was it was wonderful. You know, she just came, at one point she felt compelled to say the entire time was wonderful. And she was right. It was a really good time. When we didn't have kids, on Sunday mornings in particular, we'd wake up. It was generally her. She'd go down and she'd make coffee and tea and she'd bring it back up to bed. And then we'd lay around and we'd talk, and eventually somebody would have to go out and open the greenhouse or we'd burn the whole thing. So somebody would go out and open the greenhouse and then they'd come back and pop back into bed. And then around, 9:30, 10 o'clock, we'd get up and we would go and work an 8 or 10 hour day on a Sunday. That operation was a 7-day-a-week operation, 8 to 9 months out of the year. And then the balance was basically your weekend and preparation for the coming season all at once. Like, that was all good. But even when we were doing that and I was trying to eke out moments to do political stuff or do video content, she wanted me to go in that direction. She thought I should go in that direction. And anyway, Mrs. Frank she's my number one fan. She might not watch my videos very often because she doesn't, but she's too busy doing other things. The other half of the thing, the other half of the operation, she's responsible for that. Yeah, she's awesome. Orange man mad. Yeah, all Carney has to do is dangle the orange man. And Canada is consumed by hating his face. And it's great big, it's very short-sighted. Especially, they have so hypnotized people to hate Trump that they identify America as Trump, and Trump is not America. America is a bigger idea. America is something that Canada's had a relationship with for decades, very successful relationship. And America will still be there in one form or another when Trump is gone. But under the guise of Donald Trump derangement syndrome, they've managed to convince Canadians that, again, Carney campaigned on it and has talked about it since. They've even brought out Stephen Harper to convey the same message. We're going to suffer. We're going to face a decline in our living standards. We're going to have higher taxes and less services, and there's no cost. This is Stephen Harper. There's no cost that isn't worth paying if we can save Canada. The man who signed the Foreign Investment Protection Act, which gave China a lot of control over our country, the man who championed the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the Conservative government which brought the Sustainable Development Initiatives to Canada, with Max Bernier, by the way, as a willing participant. People like to gloss that part over, but that's the fact. He was in that government too, number 2 man, second most powerful. So a guy in his government who does that are now telling us that there's no price we shouldn't be willing to bear to save Canada. And I'm telling you, the majority of people, I believe, are just applauding that like seals. Even the media applauding Stephen Harper. After I showed on a recent video, going back into historical articles and historical news media coverage pre-2015, where they're labeling him as the American. He's the extension of the Republican Party in Canada. He's selling out our sovereignty. And that was the messaging. It was bollocks then. It's bollocks now. But the hypnotized just lap it up. And the only reason it works so well is because Donald Trump is boisterous. He's braggadocious. He's superficially hard to listen to and deal with. People hate his face. They don't like the spray tan. They don't like the hair. These are the superficial things that people focus on and derive meaning from, instead of the big details, instead of the reality underneath the surface. That's what they hyperfixate on. And in that hyperfixation, they're willing to vote for and support people who are telling the voter that their lives are about to get a lot harder. What politician has ever been successful preaching a message of doom? Only the Canadian people. Only those who have been subject to the big red machine and fully hypnotized could ever enable politicians telling them a message of doom. There should be political science books written about Canada, because I don't think it's ever been done before. A message of doom won an election, and a message of doom will likely win the next one. Because unless the Conservative Party fights, if we get Talking Point Pierre again, nothing's going to change. They might just get their majority. Because the big red machine has convinced people that Mark Carney and the Liberal Party are the saviors of Canada. And it's ludicrous to anybody that can think. And yet, here we are. It is what it is. We live in the most misinformed times. This is Chad. In the world, disinformation is the name of the game. Yeah, it's all messaging. It's insane. Harper's time was good. This is Catherine again. Harper's time was good, but largely due to the era. He did his share of damage opening trade to China, good for immediate cheap products, but hollowed out domestic prosperity. He also set record level immigration numbers. And under Stephen Harper, because I can't fully disagree with you, because looking in the rear view of the experience since then, it does look better, because objectively it was better. The issue is that if you look at the direction of Canadian politics as a closed door, and that door was squeaked open a bit by Chrétien and Martin, and it was opened a little bit, it was opened a little bit by Mulroney, and the previous prime ministers were just squeaking it open a little bit. You can't see my fingers, little tiny bits. Harper did this. He opened it a full crack that you could fit a foot through by the deals with China, but he also increased immigration to the largest it had ever been, and he changed the balance of that immigration. So instead of it being from Europe and places that have similar cultures and similar ethnic breakdowns, he shifted the immigration to the third and developing world. And then Trudeau came into office, and he kicked that door wide open. And Mark Carney stepped through. So this is a long process. So, I didn't like Harper back then, and I don't like him now. And I think if you want to get into him, you can talk about his career since he left the Prime Minister's office. That's a Davos man. That's a globalist man. That's a European man. That's not some hero of Confederation, which I think is demonstrable now when he's coming out and he's basically supporting Carney. It's the same with Doug Ford. He's supporting Carney. Not making appearances with Polyev, not building up hope for the next election. Everybody's working against the Conservative Party's election prospects. And there's just not enough people asking questions. There's not enough Conservatives asking the right question from the right angle. And there's not enough Liberals wondering why. All the Conservatives that they have been trained to hate, they're raging against Doug Ford one minute, and then the next minute they're embracing something he said. They're not thinking critically about how they're being steered into those directions. And they're not analyzing that Ford's actions since he came in office. Let's be honest, Ontario would be no different under Kathleen Wynne. It wouldn't be substantively different at all. Trudeau gut punch still left that mark. The only thing I remember about Trudeau and punches is Patrick Brazeau had a wonderful opportunity to put him down, and he lacked the discipline to do it. Yeah, missed opportunities. The trainer that sparred with Trudeau did a better job. Harper sold us out to China. He did. Harper is a globalist shill. He is. You don't actually own your stocks. That's another subject. Diane. Hi, Diane. Good to see you in here. I know I didn't announce that I was doing this. I seldom ever do. I was getting frustrated playing with the tech, and I decided I should just go live for a while and do a test of it. I'm really tweaked that the audio didn't work. That bothers me. Quebec likes federal money too much. They also like Western money. They have all of these resources in the ground, a great big bank of assets that they could develop and make money with. But they don't need to, because the system of Canada is set up in such a way as to generate essentially welfare income indefinitely for Quebec. And so they keep all of their resources in a bank account under the ground. And when they finally leave, and the Parti Québécois is about to win an election there, by all it looks like they're going to win, and they're winning on a promise of a referendum. Now, they're going to have to convince the Quebec population that it's an appropriate time to leave, and that's another question, whether or not they can get the support for that. But when they do finally leave, their intention is to leave with all of those resources intact and dump their share of the federal debt on the federal government of Canada. They believe that they can do that because they can get away with everything. They've been getting away with things 12 or 13 times. They've used the notwithstanding clause to get around the charter when they don't like it. They ban headscarves from public service. They have language laws which are completely in a violation of the charter. Everywhere else in the country has to have bilingual languages. For now, it's bilingual. Eventually, it'll be trilingual, and we'll have street signs that are this long because you'll have to have it in Aboriginal, French, English, Mandarin, Punjabi. That's the direction we're heading in. They've done a lot for themselves, and I find it particularly revolting that in the mainstream media commentary space, and even in much like if you think of Laura Babcock on Twitter, if you guys know who that is, if you don't, good, you're ahead of the game. But you think about how many of these voices, maybe not that individual, but many of these voices are calling Western separatists treasonous. They should be arrested. They should be broken up. They should be investigated. We need to sick every arm of the bureaucracy on these Western separatists. They need to be ripped apart as treasonous wretches. And yet you have a Quebec that has a fully established sovereignist movement that holds seats in federal parliament and very often holds the balance of power. We're just cool with that. We're cool with the Parti Québécois about to win a provincial election and trigger a referendum. Quebec is fine to do it and have their distinct society, but there's a whole different litmus test for Western Canada. And it just goes to show how anti-factual Canada is, how narrative-driven Canada is. Similar to the point I made at the beginning of the video about how we use the Tumbler Ridge, we use the shooter's legal birth name because we don't, I think, want to associate him with Strang, which can be mispronounced and slanged into strange. We use his birth name, but we use his chosen gender, but we don't do the same thing for the Polytechnic shooter. Like, it's the same thing. It's narrative driven. That's how we assess reality. We assess it not by facts, but by narrative and the narrative needs. So with the sovereignist movement in Quebec, it's fine, but a sovereignist movement in Alberta is treason. And these people hold those views at the exact same time, and somehow, like antimatter and matter colliding, they don't explode internally. They're just able to proceed in life filled with cognitive dissonance. You have to watch Angry Mortgage Podcast Guy. Yeah, he's pretty good. He misses sometimes. I mean, I took issue with, he did a video where, and I took issue with the way that he took responsibility. Like that was the issue. Right after Mark Carney and Daniel Smith signed the useless memorandum of understanding, which will never see a pipeline built. And even if you could build the fantasy pipeline, there's so much carbon nonsense tied up in that MOU that the oil in it would be more expensive than the market can bear. Like, it was nonsense. The entire thing was nonsense. A room full of people, including Daniel Smith and her people, applauding total nonsense that's not going to do anything. And the next day, Butler released a video where he said, I was wrong. Carney actually got it done. He got a pipeline deal done. And I remember I went into excuse me. I went into the comments and I said, dude, why are you taking responsibility for that? It's not a pipeline deal. It's a hot air deal. It's a non-binding memorandum of understanding that's never going to lead to anything getting built. And that's the truth. Because Canada is not a serious country. We don't develop resources and try and make our people rich and try to spread out prosperity. From the elites on down, we don't do that. We got this alumina fine just up the road from me. Billions upon billions of dollars could be added to the Saskatchewan economy. Do you think the federal government's going to just allow us to prosper? Do you think we're going to race to get the product to market? Do you think we're going to race to get oil to market or any other resource unless it's the Chinese who want the resource? Then we'll do it. 70% of the produced gold in Canada going to China as they seek to dethrone the American dollar. Do you understand? And there's so many layers to how stupid Canada's position vis-a-vis the United States is right now. The Canadian dollar is pegged to the U.S. dollar, like the fiat currencies of the world all lean on the U.S. dollar, which is the king fiat dollar. The U.S. dollar falls, we fall harder. The Chinese and the BRICS nations are looking to accumulate physical gold and physical silver in their vaults, and they've already rolled out the unit, which is a settlement layer that exists between the countries, which is backed by 40% gold and 60% a basket of fiat currencies. It's a hybrid system. It's not a gold standard. It's a hybrid system. And Canada doesn't have any gold reserves. We don't have any silver reserves. And what we produce, we're shipping elsewhere. Even our silver that we refine here, most of it goes to the United States. We don't keep any of it. So we are attacking America. We are doing everything we can. The Americans aren't running wall-to-wall radio ads and TV ads declaring that Canada is unhinged and out of control and that they're the enemy that we have to fight. That's the Canadian media that's doing that. Running radio ads that are saying, don't advertise on social media. Don't update your business model. You need to pull all your money out of social media because it's funding the swimming pools of Silicon Valley people, as if Mark Carney probably doesn't have a beautiful swimming pool somewhere, and as if all of his assets and wealth isn't parked in the United States. You got to stop paying for social media advertising, and you got to start advertising on the radio and in print newspapers and on TV. First off, who can afford to buy ad space? Small mom and pop businesses, which are largely buying their goods and reselling them from China, but that's another story. Who could afford to buy TV ad space? Who could afford to buy radio ad space? It's pretty pricey too. It's cheaper than TV, I'll admit that. And why would you want to put advertising in newspapers which are disappearing? I'm sorry, folks. I mean, I'm a fan of print media, but it's disappearing. Most of it is owned by the corporate conglomerates. When you open a newspaper and you see local journalism initiative journalist, something like that, local coverage initiative journalist, whatever, they're subsidized by the state. A lot of your media is being subsidized by the state now, including print media. Why would you turn your back on social media, which is the one place that you can actually, like when you want to sell something, where do you go? Do you go to the classified section in your newspaper? Do you run a $600 radio blitz so that you can sell some of your used books? Or do you go on Marketplace? Do people even use Kijiji anymore? You go on Marketplace, you go on Kijiji, or you go on Craigslist. I don't know. I might be dating myself here. I don't even know if people still use that stuff. I think the place that's lit is Marketplace. And for free, you make a listing for free, and you deal directly with the person who's got the money that you're trying to get for the thing that you're trying to sell. And you're often put together in very short order. And they don't want you to use it. That's Canada. We're running those ads. We're running the anti-American ads. Our leaders, Doug Ford, threatening to cut off 1.5 million Americans from electricity. It's our language that's aggressive. We have a huge tariff regime. We charge the world to do business in Canada. We charge them a lot of money. And we just ignore that. Like the whole reciprocal tariff argument, when Trump applied reciprocal tariffs, reciprocal means it's matching what we charge them. We spent 4 years insulting the legacy of the Trump administration while Biden was in office. We laughed and we joked and we memed, and we still do. You've got Adler. Is it Adler or is it Adder? The cartoonist who's supposed to be funny. And his recent cartoon, you know what? Let's see if we can just get this up on screen for a minute. I'm going to show you what the state of political humor, because I'm pretty sure I retweeted it. We just might. There it is. Look at this. Everything Trump said about the Gordie Howe Bridge was wrong. There's Carney looking more muscular than he ever has. It's like they hybridized Mark Carney's image with Gordie Howe. It's like they can't watch the video where he stepped on the ice with the Edmonton Oilers and proceeded to fire a shot way high over the net. I give him credit. He can skate way better than I can. But like the caption, the referee, he shit himself again. Is this supposed to be funny? people are applauding this and they're sharing it. This is the face of Canadian diplomacy. You might not think it matters. There's a lot of people in the comments when I reposted this that don't think it matters, but it does. This is the reaction, and this is how we're seen, and we're lucky a lot of times that we're not taken seriously and we're not paid attention to. Like, we're the ones that are overreacting. I don't even know what I was responding to at this point, other than, that was it. Ron Butler, he shouldn't have taken the fall and admitted that he was wrong, because there will be no pipeline. That's probably the only disagreement I've ever had with the angry mortgage guy. At some point, I'd like to have a conversation with him. Ron Butler, he's a character for sure. The corruption and rot is too deep, says, what's in your head? There's nothing to save about Canada. I think there's a land and I think there's a people underneath the surface that are very much worth saving. When I, you have to differentiate, or I do anyway. You can do what you want. But in my mind, I differentiate between Canada, the system, and Canada, the people and the land. And I very much still love Canada, the people and the land, the core of it. I don't love the system. When I was ignorant, I thought the system was great, but the more I learned, the more I come to revile the Westminster system. And every time I bring that up, not every time, but like when I bring it up, oftentimes, no, I'm going to go back to every time. People will pop in the comments section or post and they'll say, well, why don't you just leave? I don't want to leave, man, because I still love the people in the land. I don't want to leave. I just want better. Why do you get attacked for saying that you should have better? That we can do better, that people can do, the people who pay for the whole thing, that they can expect better. Why do you get attacked for that? Why do you get told to leave? It's like, leave me here in prison, man. If you don't like the prison, go and be free. It's kind of a weird angle to come from. Oh, man. I'm so far behind in the chat again. Frank Fringe Clyde always promoting Western relocation? Wah! Says a numbered Len. I don't even know what you mean, man. Fringe and Clyde do not get along. And I've never talked to Fringe, but I can tell you that I have talked to Clyde. He's always been good to me. We have conversations. We disagree on some things, but he's always been human. And just because he's moving to the United States, people attack him for that. Why don't you just leave now? Shouldn't be the message. Clyde's a productive member of society. He's got a career as a mechanic. He's got a business on YouTube. I do things differently than Clyde. I'm not trying to throw shade at him because of my choices and how I do things differently by just having donate links and not being monetized. That's a taxpayer. And your advice to a taxpayer who's critical of the Canadian government is just get out and take your family with you? We have a demographic problem and you want to take a guy who actually has kids and you want to kick him out of the country? It's just a weird reaction. It's because you disagree with him. He does his thing. And he's always been decent to me. So I don't know. I don't know what you want from me on that one. Banks are a fraud. Banking is a fraud. Well, it's legal. So can you call it fraud? They just print money. I had an experience the other day with my son. I actually started explaining central banking to him and how the banks actually work, and explaining that you don't just put your money in the bank. It's not sitting there in a box for you to get out. Like if you put an amount of money, more than I've got, if you put it in the bank, there's limitations on what you can do with it. When you want to move it, you got to go in and have meetings. If you want to e-transfer more than $3,000, you can't. If you want to e-transfer more than $30,000 in a month, you can't. You want to make a debit transaction more than $1,000, most people can't. You want to withdraw and close your bank account, you can't get it in cash. If you're lucky, you'll get it in a money order or a cashier's check or something, and you'll be able to go to another institution and deposit it, but you still can't cash the money order or the cashier's check and get same cash. It has to go in the bank. So, you put it in, and you're prevented from getting it back, because it's a loan racket. They fractional reserve. They do all these things. So anyway, I started telling my son about central banking and how the central banks create money and they issue it at interest. And I was explaining some concepts that went over his head, but he'll pick it all up as he goes. So I come back here, I work for a little while longer, and I go back out there, and I'm walking down to take a leak, and I'm walking past his bedroom, and I noticed there's some new signs on his door. And I should show you the picture, but I don't have it readily available. But I took a picture of it because he had one sign, and it was, "Don't come in," because I think he got that from the fact that I was talking about a central bank. It's a closed institution. It's you're either in it or you're not in it. It's an exclusionary thing. Don't come in. And then the second sign was money store. So I don't know. He figured out that central banking is the biggest racket and it's the best way to make money, and so he started a money store. Now the problem is he started issuing his own currency, and he's been doing so for the last 2 days, issuing his own banknotes. And he had an envelope, and on the envelope he wrote, "To Daddy from Frank," and he comes running in, and he's got this envelope, and he's like, "Here you go." And it was the first note that was in it was $1 trillion banknote. He's like, "Here, you're rich now." But the thing was stuffed full of his currency, and he's giving it away. And then he said to his mother over breakfast today, he said, "How much money do you want today?" And she said, $500. And he's like, "Okay, but you're going to have to give me 400 back." And I'm like, that's not how central banking works, buddy, because they give you the money, and then you have to get more back. And you got to get more back because you have to stomp on somebody. Somebody's got to lose in order for you to have enough money to cover money that's been issued in interest when money, Anyway, I thought it was comedic. He recognized the business opportunity, and it was better than a Lego store, which was his most recent idea. The best 2 ideas he's come up with so far are carpentry and farming. Which, yeah. John Bacco, you would be a better leader for the PPC. I can't be. PPC has no mechanism for new leadership anyway. It's a corporate structure. It's top down. There's no room for advancement up the chain. There's no room for removal of Bernier. He sits in Florida, he collects his salary, and he reemerges every so often to do elections. I don't know who's running the social media account anymore. I used to, but I noticed that the People's Party of Canada, they follow me now, but Bernier has me blocked, and most PPC people have me blocked. Most of those people are anonymous accounts. I don't know who's running the social media. Has it been outsourced? Is it some student? Is it run out of India? I don't know. I'm speculating. But I think the brand is done. So I don't think any leader is going to be able to turn the PPC into something. I think you have to have something else. I don't think the PPC was ever intended to be anything. At the beginning, I thought maybe. I really did. When I was involved with it, I helped establish it. When we filed the paperwork to register the PPC with Elections Canada, we needed 250 signatures, and I provided 10 of them, 10 or 11 of those original 250 signatures, not initial memberships, those signatures. And I could tell you some stories about the membership numbers and how there's I think I was issued some 4-digit member number when I was literally one of the first, and I think there's a reason for that. But I really thought it had potential to be a 3-cycle party if the focus was in the right direction and if it was actually a genuine people's party where there were people involved and there was a constitution that spelled out rights and a way for people to advance policy, and you could design it in such a way, because there was always the excuse that's been given for all these years is that you can't have those things because bad actors would spoil it. And it's a really lame excuse. And it's actually a sign of weak leadership, that you have no faith that you can carry your own people in the right direction through leadership and charisma alone. It shows weakness. At any rate, I think it's a dead brand. I really do. I think it's just a business project. I think it's going to continue to receive funding. I think it's going to continue to try to undermine conservative politics. I think instead of leading to stronger conservative positions, it actually leads to weaker positions. And there's a lot there, but no, I'm beyond done with that. I have no idea what Tick is trying to do here. Is this bots speak? CCP, CBC, MI6, Santa Claus, West Minister, FFS. That just looks like... Can I do that? Yeah, look at this. I can do that. I didn't realize I had that power. Wow, that's cool. Anyway, That looks really painful to write. Like, that's got to take a long time to henpeck out, and I'm not even sure what is being communicated there. If Frank ran for... This is awesome. This is awesome. This is why test is in the title. If Frank ran for CPC leader, he's got to speak Quebecer. It's probably never going to happen. Can't see myself speaking French. And furthermore, I don't know why you got to. They're not going to vote for you anyway if you're a conservative politician. And even if they did, look, are you telling me that you can't be a champion for provincial rights and you can't be a champion for Quebec and their provincial autonomy? That you can't rig that in a certain way? Like, why do you have to speak English to respect Quebec? Why do you have to kowtow to language laws outside of Quebec? I think that you could be a good federal representative for the provincial jurisdiction of Quebec without ever speaking a lick of French. So I'm not going to play that game. Unless I want to learn the language. But if I was going to learn a second language, I think there's a couple leading candidates that might be ahead of French. Here we go. Sandy Klein, you are spreading false truths. Canadian banks are more stable than most of the world's banks. Canadian banking? Wasn't it TD Bank that just got caught laundering money? We are only stable so long as the currency is stable. We're only stable so long as the fiat money game continues along. Otherwise, we face the same structural problems that the rest of the Western world faces when fiat is in decline. Like, our banks are not... First off, they willingly cooperated with, and I admit this is a bit of a segue and a bit of a different subject, but they willingly cooperated with the federal government's lawless, forget illegal, lawless mandate to debank people that were buying coffees and meals for people that participated in the Freedom Convoy. They have been caught laundering money. And when you say they got caught, that's all you see. You don't see what else is going on. And I could talk about how Canadian banking in Canada is structured, as I have in previous videos, around money laundering through the real estate markets, through casinos, ultimately leads to banking. All I'm saying is, I don't think we got much to brag about. We have problems. They're just painted over by a thin veneer of stability that is so far holding. The world economy is moving to a local system. China isn't local. They're local to Asia. The regime that they're trying to set up is local to their region. We're heading to a multipolar world. I agree with that, which is in a sense local. And I think the dollar's days are numbers. And actually, people were referencing Marco Rubio's JFK speech. I haven't seen it. But he talked about how in 5 years, the United States will lose its power to sanction because the U.S. dollar is going to fall apart. And he's right. The global reserve currency is there's not going to be a single global reserve currency. There's going to be regional currencies and maybe a new international settlement layer. And China is positioned to be a big part of that, a big part of the region. Like that's why they're buying physical assets. Like that's why they're making moves in Africa and they're securing the resource lines. That's why they've put export controls on physical silver. They're the world's premier silver refiner. I don't know if people know that. So like. The people who mine silver, they produce doré and concentrates, and then they ship it to China to be refined into pure silver. And China does the world's lion's share of that process. So they've now said, we have strict export controls over who can export refined silver, but we're still going to remain the world's premier silver refiner. So the silver is going to go in, and then they're going to dictate how much comes out. It's not about just silver as money, because it is money. It's also about silver as a commodity. Key for that high-tech U.S. military that we're always hearing about doesn't function without silver. It's like a monster box. 500 ounces of silver go into every single tomahawk, and it's vaporized and gone and irrecoverable in practical purposes. The United States depends far too heavily, as the rest of the world does, on China's refining capacity. They're sucking in real resources. People talk about the debt to GDP ratio of China being 300%. Very true. But they're trading their fiat, which is approaching worthlessness, they're trading it while they can for real intangible assets and creating dependencies so that when they transition or they change the nature of the one into something else, or they develop the unit and deploy these brick systems that they're building in the Belt and Road Initiative, they're creating dependencies that will underpin whatever their currency situation is. And the Western world's kind of caught with its pants down, including the United States on this front, because they don't have as much. We just spent decades deindustrializing. We talked about Harper earlier, we talked about the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and we talked about the Foreign Investment Protection Act. We've deindustrialized, and we've given them the keys to the real economy, to made things, to tangibles, to Main Street. They control a lot of it. And because of that control, I don't think their debt to GDP ratio means as much as people think it does, because underneath all of that is enough real and tangible stuff that whatever currency transition and economic crisis they face, they're positioning themselves ahead of time to emerge on the other side of it stronger because they have the tangibles. And that's the difference. And I think the Trump administration is trying to move the United States in that direction. They're trying to onshore manufacturing. They just committed to building a silver refinery. They're looking to expand tangibles, which have been outsourced, and they're trying to bring them back. They're facing way more headwinds than the Chinese do, because the Chinese, Beijing being in control, it's a little bit nuanced, as I've covered before, how the individual provinces have a lot more power than people think. Beijing is not as all-powerful as people like to think. It's much closer to a national socialist regime that is more decentralized than people like to think. Like when we think national socialism, we think Germany, and we think about the total top-down control that they had. China's not quite the same. People have the ability to gripe at home about the situation in China. You know, they have restrictions on social media, and that's another thing demographically. They have restrictions on effeminate men. They have restrictions on their culture so that they avoid a lot of the brain rot that they're promoting in North America. You know, it's very a non-kinetic psychological warfare that we are all, not all of us, but Canada's culture in general is a willing participant in, and a lot of American culture is a willing participant in. The wokeification of everything. The latest woke tragedy is Star Trek Academy, which is just absolute woke balderdash nonsense that nobody wants to watch. It creates a lot of friction, and the Chinese are keen to keep that out. At any rate, the United States is trying to fix it, but the issue is politically, November's coming. The Democrat Party might be a mess, but they might be able to cobble together a House majority. There's headwinds constantly coming along to any administration that's trying to do anything because of the nature of the republic. The Chinese don't have to worry about that. The CCP is just in control, and they can afford to have longer-term vision and longer-term planning and stick to that plan. And their long-term vision has been to suck up the world's manufacturing using Chinese labor, because the CCP does not care about, they care more now than they used to, but use that cheap labor to get all the world's manufacturing concentrated into China. And then use that clout and that currency to buy the wealth of the world. When I talk about wealth, I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about resources. I'm talking about commodities. I'm talking about ownership of commodities and influence. China's big in Canada. In ag, they're big in Canada when it comes to oil. They're big in Canada when it comes to gold. They have a footprint all over the world in real and tangible things that they've used their fiat money to trade for. Their worthless printed money, like everybody else, they've traded it for real things, as the world was willing to sell that to them. And now, as I said, they're trying to bring some of that back into North America. And if you take Carney at face value, he'd like to do the same thing for Canada, but he's clearly not doing that. And it might be too little, too late. I think the crisis is coming. I think it's coming in 26. Royal Canadian Political Police, new name on crest. I mean, when you're worried about misgendering, and the privacy of a scumbag who went and shot to death a bunch of kids in school, you know you're really off the map. I mean, I guess they didn't do a land acknowledgement beforehand. which they like to do. Land acknowledgements before they get to the, like, it's nonsense. It's verbal diarrhea. It doesn't help anything. It doesn't unite us. It divides us. It makes us weaker. Subscribe. Money Fever says subscribe. I've never seen you in the chat before. See this? Look at this. I can do this. Money Fever. Subscribe. With money signs. Subscribing doesn't do me any favors monetarily. I don't even know how that works. Like, the subscribers actually drive how much money you make on YouTube? I don't actually know. Tennessee, no state tax. Be something if we had that in one of the provinces in Canada. Going to Parliament Hill will get you charged? I don't know about that, but I'll tell you, when you're up there, when was it? I think it was before I ran federally. I'm going to say it was 2018, summertime. And I went up there because I was supposed to speak at a rally. A Lebanese guy, a Lebanese immigrant, was putting on a rally, and I was supposed to speak at it. And I got there, and I decided beforehand I wanted to spend my time with the protesters, which were much more numerous. I think most people that were going to go to that rally probably didn't get there because they saw the Antifa people, and they just left. You know, they didn't want the conflict. And at any rate, there I am in my suit. I had a camera guy with me, a good friend of mine. He was just manning the camera that day. And I went to the protester side of things, these Antifa people, and I just started interviewing people, or trying to interview people. They're swearing at me, and they're threatening me, and they're doing all this stuff. And there was another brave couple there, and I'll never forget that couple, who were Ukrainians who had immigrated here, and they were there to argue with the Antifa people that were flying hammer and sickle flags. There was also Union flags there that had the hammer and sickle on those flags. And that really upset the Ukrainians. They're like, you have no idea what that flag means. And I concurred in my own way. I was asking people, you know, like, you're here and you're claiming that this Lebanese guy is a white supremacist Nazi, but, you know, you're doing it under the hammer and sickle. And do you understand the hypocrisy of that? And so, at any rate, the point I'm trying to get to is, as I'm having these conversations, all of a sudden the police, just your civilian police, come out and they separate us from the rally. So this is why I never got to the rally, was the police came out and they separated the two parties. So I was trapped with the Antifa people. And then, as the crowd started to swell and it was getting louder, all of a sudden the real military, paramilitary force behind Parliament Hill came out. And the next thing you know, you're completely surrounded by guys with semi-automatic, and I guarantee you those clips, the 30-round clips, they were not pinned to 5 rounds. The government gets to have the real stuff. And you're completely surrounded by a militarized police force. And do you ever understand how quick you can be put down as a civilian protest, at least in Ottawa? It's very militarized. Very militarized. I don't know if I put that documentary back up. It had terrible audio. I think there's a video, actually. There's an old video on the channel where it's my debates from the federal election, and I think I slapped that documentary, or that mini doc. I think it's slapped in there. It's like a 2-hour video, and I think it's part of it. It's just buried in there. If you want to look that up, you can. Epstein and the UK government royal family. Yeah, you know, I keep getting told to watch Promethean updates and the whole Promethean action thing. And the thing that I think they're on to a lot of good things, but they emphasize the city of London, and I do as well, but they really work to diminish the Israeli role in things and the Mossad role in things. And I have to question why they do that, because it's very clear to me that the Zionist cause and Mossad has a hell of a lot more clout than the size of the Israeli government and the size of Israel would make you think. And I just, I kind of have to question people who downplay that influence, which is very clear. Maybe Trump has got a long play when it comes to countering Israeli influence on American politics. But I often think actions speak louder than words. I think he's done a very good job resisting getting involved in a great big war in Iran. But I can't help but note Netanyahu comes to Washington, has a 3-hour meeting with Trump, and a second carrier group is steaming towards the Middle East right now. And there's a lot of talk about talks, but those talks aren't happening. And, I just wonder if Trump has fully escaped the trap of Iranian regime change. Like, I don't think you can safely and factually downplay the influence of Israel in American politics. It's outsized. It's huge. Jamie Boyd says, "Good afternoon, Patriots. Greetings from Admiral Windsor, George Cross. RCN from L. Sid Barrett." All right. Trump. Here we go. Trump doesn't care because he's not involved. He's very self-centered, and I voted for Trump. I would vote for him again. Yeah, I get the sentiment of voting for him. I understand why you might, but I can't. There's no way in my mind that I cannot pretzel myself into rubber stamping and dismissing the fact that his administration is actively downplaying what the whole Epstein thing is really revealing. And it's not just the Epstein thing. It's the Clinton thing. It's the Podesta emails. It's all of it. And things that we've known about for 20 years. I mean, I knew Epstein's name long before he got arrested. I think I even knew his name before he got arrested the first time, because we were all fringe conspiracists at that point. We now know that the conspiracy is a reality. We know that it exposes the elites doing whatever the hell they want without ever facing, unless they fall out of line, that's the only time they face any kinetic or judicial pressure. Usually it's kinetic. They accidentally fall out of apartment balconies, or they get assassinated by a lone gunman. We now know because we can read about it. And for whatever reason, the administration is shrugging on laying charges. And some, there's a lot, and there's a huge cover saying that Trump is guilty and that he's a PDF himself. I still don't necessarily believe that. I actually don't believe that, but I would change my mind if I saw sufficient evidence that suggested 100% that he was. But I cannot deny that he's covering it up. Now, is he doing that to protect intelligence agencies? If that's the case, which I think is the most likely thing, is that he's protecting intelligence agencies, CIA, Mossad, MI6. If he's doing that, then clearly the deep state is not out of control. You know what I mean? If you're covering for this operation because it would bring down the biggest deep state story, or would release the biggest deep state story, which involves all of the power brokers that have, you read the Epstein emails. They pioneered how to handle pandemics, and everything that we went through in 2020, 2021, and 2022, they had discussed and mapped and planned that out. Bill Gates and all of them, not just Bill Gates, but a lot of them, they had figured all of that out and how to monetize it years and years before it happened. Nobody's been charged. It's all just being swept under the rug, and we're told it's boring, that it's a boring story, and we shouldn't be interested. Man, we should be way more interested. Asmund Gold is knees deep in it. He's a Warcraft streamer. That's how interesting it is. So something ain't right. And then you watch Bondi. I haven't watched the entire hearing, but you watch that hearing and you watch the way that she's answering questions. Man, she is ducking and pivoting, and it is a political masterclass, but it wasn't a masterclass in honesty and transparency. Something's wrong, man. Something ain't right. And I see, there's good things that are happening. Getting a handle on illegal immigration, that's a positive. The stuff that Bobby Kennedy's doing over at the FDA, and the CDC and with whatever agency it is that governs food and the newly released food pyramid that they came out with. Like, I mean, the oversight the exposure that's going into the vaccine pharmaceutical industry is great. There's a lot of good stuff happening. But the total picture, it's like you're drinking a fine wine, but there's just a slick of oil over top of it. Like there's something not right. And I don't know what that is. Well, here's a take. Trump played their game and now has the goods on all of it. Maybe that's the case. Maybe it's reverse blackmail. Maybe he's playing some kind of game. But for me, when someone has trafficked in minors, when they've engaged in human trafficking at all, there's only one solution: justice. There's no great game in the world that's worth avoiding justice for those things. And I can't escape the fact, and it's the very real fact, that the people who are being implicated are still out there. They might be losing their jobs. You got Mandelson out over in the UK. The Starmer government might fall. Yes, that's happening. You have lawyers that are resigning, but they're walking away. They're walking away to still operate and to still live their lives. They're not facing accountability for their crimes. And I can't justify that. Not for any political purpose. I can't get behind that. And I never will. I keep my kid off social media. He gets YouTube only. My kids, which are very young, they get curated videos, social media, free of advertising. YouTube, free of advertising. And they're not going to have devices for a while, like for a long time. Their minds work. They have great imaginations the way that kids do. They build things. They create things. My son is trying to establish himself as the household central banker. I want to keep encouraging that. They're learning physical skills, the skating, sports, how to build things, cutting wood, building fires, practical stuff. I think kids have an imagination, and I think too much access to screens. We know this, actually. Like Steve Jobs didn't let his kids have the toys because the mind has to develop to be able to handle the toys. I think back to my time in Ontario, and there was a couple I knew there that homeschooled, and they were one of my first experiences with homeschooling parents, and they were awesome. Great people, salt of the earth, give you the shirt off their back, so helpful, wonderful people. I helped them in return. I set them up as competition to me, and I was happy to do it. And they had 4 kids. They homeschooled them all. And the thing that amazed me is there was another business that would hire students set up near them. They would hire students every summer. And over the course of the years that I was there, the quality of the student was in decline to the point where, they'd buy a couple of items that the total was $3.75. So it's $2.25 and $1.50. They couldn't add that up in their head. They had to reach for their devices to add that up with a calculator. And then when they weren't directly engaged with a customer, they're sitting at the back of their stall and they're just on their phone the entire time, just like glued to it, not making eye contact with potential customers, and you're just watching sales walk away. Because I'll tell you, when you're working a stall at a market, you got to engage. You don't got to be forceful. If you're working a small town or you're working a small city, you don't be forceful. You don't try to talk to every single person, but you can recognize when someone's interested, and then you can engage. You know what I mean? You got to be ready. You got to be watching, or you ain't going to make no money. And like these kids, they're just isolated and they're backed off. That homeschool family, one of them was like 16, 18 years old. Another one was like 14. They were all spaced out. They all had cell phones, or at least the older ones had cell phones. They were never on them, man. They were never on them. They could add in their heads. They knew how to engage. They had the social skills. They had the talent. And you could see they were going places. And they went off to, as they got older, they went off to university, and they didn't get ruined by the experience because they had a strong foundation. That's what I want. I want to raise humans, not automatons. Peter, Frank, have you given any thought to working with the Sask independence movement? I talked about this already today. I've absolutely given it thought. I support them every step of the way. I think it's pretentious, only being here 4 years, to try to insert myself into that. I've been asked many times to get more directly involved. I'm probably going to continue to be asked to get more directly involved. But I don't think it's time yet. And I don't know when that'll change. I can just tell you it's not today. I also have a lot more liberty. Like, if you get involved with a political movement, then you have to have a strategy. And to some degree, you have to start limiting your focus. And at the stage that I'm at right now, I'm focused on so many different things that even when I'm making videos for the channel, I don't talk about half as many things as I'd like to. There's a lot of things I'd like to talk about that I just can't seem to get to because something else always takes priority. And other than this format, we've been at this for 2.5 hours already. Other than this format where I allow myself the freedom to just talk about whatever, I only figure I've got about a half hour a day to communicate with people. And I have to ask myself, what is it? Am I going to communicate with people? It's okay, come on in. I'm just being invaded. How is everybody? Stay back. Stay back. I don't want you on camera. How's it going? Yeah? Did you do a lot of skating? Very good. At any rate, there's only a half hour a day. There's only so much that people can pay attention to. And I never really know what to do with it. So, or it's not that I never know what to do with it. It's just there's only so much I can do with it. And, if I release multiple videos in a day, then people aren't watching them. And I'm always asking myself, even at this size, it's like, how can I make the best impact today? And I'll tell you, most of the time, I don't feel like I've done it justice. And the times that I think I've done something really good, like I actually look at my work and I'm like, that was a good one. It doesn't get as much viewership. So I really don't know what people are after because I'm not thinking about what people are after. I'm trying to think about what I can effectively communicate in a day. I'm not really thinking about feeding my audience what they want. Anyway, I don't know. I don't know when the time to get directly involved will be. Crazy how they keep mass importing migrants when people can't find jobs here. Yeah, I mean, we created a slave class in this country called the temporary foreign worker, and we created a supplementary slave class through the IMP program. These people work. They're subsidized by the taxpayer. They live in hotels or they live sandwiched into the basements of houses. They're paid minimum wage or below, and they often work a lot of hours that are unpaid, and if they don't do as they're told, the people who are managing them threaten to deport them, and this all goes without any real coverage by the mainstream media. And while this is all going on, while we're exploiting these temporary workers, while we're exploiting these foreigners, we're displacing people in Canada who just want to find jobs so that they can not even afford a house. That's changing, but not even afford a house or a room in an apartment because they don't make enough to afford those things. We're displacing them. So everybody's getting harmed by this mass importation. And even the liberals are recognizing that they got to pare it back. Pare it back enough that the conservatives are saying, whoa, whoa, whoa now, you're going too far. The worst message the conservatives have thus far engaged in is criticizing the liberals slowing immigration. It's incredible to me that nobody's taking that ball and running with it either. We talked about all the other balls that nobody's carrying. That's another one. The immigration file could get aggressive, but they don't do aggressive. Sherry Fisher, Westminster system sucks, Frank. You're right. That is a nice hollyhock right there. And I think we're looking at baby's breath in the front. Sherry, I think you're proud of that hollyhock. That looks like a double if my eyes don't lie to me. But yeah, it does. It's terrible. We can do better. Yeah, so here's one. Dude, I cannot pronounce the word dude without going, dude. I'm not mocking you. Dude, Main Street, Nipawin has 4 shops with their windows blacked out, cell phone shops that don't sell cell phones. They're actually a place you go to send back money to India. Yeah. It's everywhere. It's in small town Saskatchewan. It's in the cities in Saskatchewan. It's in every province you go to. The federal government has made sure that the TFW IMP problem is spread out. The immigration problem is spread out everywhere. And the places where it wasn't, they actually actively, a few years ago, they singled out places and targeted them for demographic reworking. And it's kind of funny because maybe not these cell phone shops, but I went into a cell phone shop to price out the cracked screen on my Galaxy S5, very ancient phone, which I was more than happy to keep. And they quoted me like $400 to replace the glass on it. And for that, you can buy a used 2 or 3 generation old phone for the same price. So why would you put the glass on it? I'm like, with those kinds of prices, how much business are you actually doing through here? And you, sir, hit the nail on the head. There's something else going on. This is actually McMichael. We're in a war, a cultural war. Social media is the trenches, psyops, smoke and mirrors, psychological warfare. And the reason I want to highlight that is because it's going to get worse. It's going to get way worse. I got an email just yesterday. I get emails every day from people who are like, check out this video. And more often than not, when I click onto that video, it's AI generated. That's the other issue I have with Promethean, is a lot of their content is digitally altered or AI generated. The information might be good, but it's clearly, like, if I wanted to, I can take my image and I can sample my voice and I can have my background and I can generate content that I'm not even involved in. So I'm going to be sitting here very still, and the way that you're going to be able to tell is my mouth movements won't be organic and the eyes really give it away. The blinking of the eyes is still weird. It's not perfect yet. The scary part is it's going to get perfect. It's going to get much more sophisticated, and it's going to get a lot harder to spot AI-generated content. If you are at all following the silver market, I follow it because I believe it's historic right now, and I believe it's a symbol of something that's going on, which is the battle between paper and physical. And there's a physical shortage there, and there's a big story there, and it's been ongoing for 5 years, and I've been paying attention to it for a long time, and I think it's coming to a head. But if you're familiar at all with silver social media, you're familiar with Asian Guy, or OG John. It's an artificially generated Asian content guy that over the previous months has taken over YouTube. He's everywhere. If you type in the word silver and you start looking at silver, it's going to be recommended to you by the algorithm. John AG. What's some of the other ones? The boring currency, I think, is one of his one of the channels. And I don't know who's driving it, but it's totally AI generated, AI imagery, AI speech, AI avatar. On one channel, he's talking about how you got to buy silver because it's going to go down. On another channel, he's talking about the imminent dump. And it's just like, it's out there, and it's propagating, and new channels are popping up with the same guy all over the place. And the email I got the other day was a video citing an executive order that Trump signed that didn't exist, and citing something Carney did in response that checkmated Trump that didn't happen. And it was a 19-minute video that somebody took the time to recommend to me. And within 30 seconds, I could tell it was AI generated. It's fooling people already, and it's not that good. Which is why one of the things I do here is I'm trying to dedicate myself to, wrong or right, whether I'm the most effective communicator or I suck balls. I am here trying to be real. And I'm dedicated to being real. I don't want to use AI-generated content. I don't want to get into that. I just want to be a place that people know is real. And even if you disagree with what I say or you think I'm an idiot, whatever your thoughts are, that you'll know that at least I'm genuine and that it's just a touchstone of reality, because as we move forward through time, it's going to get harder and harder to know what's real. Because if you take people out of the picture, how many grainy-looking cell phone videos are being put out that are completely artificially generated? And you can spot them if you train yourself to learn how to spot them. But I'm telling you, a lot of people are fooled. You go to that Silver Dude's comment section, the AI is not a dude. That AI Silver channel, and you read the comments, maybe those comments are generated by AI too, but I think a lot of them are real. And a lot of people are interacting with the channel as though it is real content. And you can see people being fooled in real time. And it's a scary thing. What's this? Hey, Frank, Terry Lane, your LS, I don't know what that means. Your LS has made me think of a movie I once watched. It resonated with me, and do believe, though there are a few great points, the American president's final speech, we need a politician. My LS? I don't know what that means. I don't know. I'm not really sure what's going on there, Terry. Maybe I'm just obtuse. Secret blast rigs. You can't avoid a war that's already being waged against you. The more insane the other people are, the more likely they will force full mutual assured destruction to hold us hostage. You won't be holding us hostage if we go that route. If we go mutually assured destruction, we'll be worried about seeds and clubs, and our priorities will change, and all of these political conversations we're having now will be forgotten, along with the highly technological society we've built. It'll all just be gone. And we will be passing down oral and written traditions. If we're lucky, we'll have written traditions, but it might just be oral. And we will talk about a time when the stars fell from the sky and the cities were obliterated from the face of the earth. And they'll read much like the myths we read about today. And people will not know what happened, just like we don't know what happened when the Ice Age ended. And we don't know what was going on before the Ice Age ended. We have hints. We have archaeological findings, and we have cities that are under 30 or 40 meters of water, and the only way that they could be there is if they were built before the ice melted. So we know that something was going on Earth before the ice melted. We know that we built pyramids on every single continent on Earth. We built huge megalithic walls and stone structures, and we built them using the same technology, which we can't figure out today, and we built them everywhere. So there was, to my mind, when I look at all the evidence, when I look at the archaeological evidence, when I look at the work that's been done, I'm convinced there was a global civilization, and it's gone now, and we only see the stone remnants of it. And it came to a cataclysmic end. I mean, what drove people to live underground in these vast catacombs that are carved out of limestone and other rock bases in Turkey and Cyprus and all of these other places? Like, what caused them to go underground? What's actually being communicated to us in petroglyphs? What about Göbekli Tepe, where you have vast, we've only uncovered like 3 or 4% of it at this point, and the other chunk, they basically said they're not going to uncover to preserve it, which I think is stupid, because these people built supposedly hunter-gatherers, because a lot of the coverage you see still talks about them in terms of hunter-gatherers. Hunter-gatherers couldn't do it, because you have to have a huge excess labor force to be able to build these structures. And in order to have surplus labor, you have to have surplus food. And if you're a hunter-gatherer society, you don't have the surplus food to undertake these massive constructions. And then you make the construction like is done at this Göbekli Tepe. You make this massive stone structure, ring after ring after ring after ring, and then you conscientiously bury it with aggregate, which preserves it for us to find. And God only knows how many more of these things are left out there to be found. We find buried archaeological structures that were deliberately buried by human hands that are older than we have memory of. We find them buried, and then we ascribe them to not Neanderthals. Let me be factual. We ascribe them to human hands and hunter-gatherers. It doesn't make any sense. We had a global civilization. They clearly traded globally. They built pyramids everywhere. They built massive stone structures everywhere. They built interlocking stones that you can't fit a paper through between thousands of years. You have Baalbek. There's so much you got out there. We know, categorically proven, there was a human civilization we don't know anything about. So if we go the route of mutually assured destruction, there won't be as much left of what we've built, but there will be stories. So if we go that direction, nothing we're doing right now matters. All of our technology, pictures alive with movements free. That's how we might remember television. That's how we might remember computers. Pictures come alive with movements free. That's a line out of a poem. Anyway, it's we don't know anything. People that migrated from Alberta to BC became like hippies on steroids, apparently, when you look at how BC played out. Lower mainland, the lower mainland is what kind of guides policy, very lefty, but the interior, still very conservative. It's not all of BC, but, it is a lot of it. My mom had 9 kids, says stand on guard with me. Very productive. Got any tattoos? Should I tell you? Or should I be paranoid and worried that you'll identify them? I don't have any. I've never been pierced. I've never had a tattoo. I've never had any body modification. Other than gaining some weight, if you include that as body modification. Nothing. I'm clean. Clean as the day I was born, just a little bit more hairy. Mark Sneed says, first thing, cut off ties with the British parlor crap system. I don't like the word parlor crap, but whatever. That's what people do. But yeah, we should cut the monarchy off. As a modern country, we shouldn't have a king. We should want better for everybody, and for some reason we don't. Would you call the USA a safe haven from Canada? Well, that's a loaded question. Depends on how you quantify the term safe haven. I mean, there's places in the United States that might be fine to live in. You think areas of Idaho, areas of Oregon, Utah, Montana, the Deep South, if you want to deal with tornadoes. I mean, there's the Appalachians, upstate New York. There's so many places, but and you have the Constitution, which I think is superior. I think having the Constitution as a citizen, as a civilian, gives you a lot better of a chance, gives you a leg up than, say, having the Charter does. Like the structure of the United States is superior to Canada in just about every way. But it has its problems too. And then, if you're talking about Montana or Wyoming, or you have to deal with the fact that all the nuclear silos are there. And if you do get down to a nuclear war, they're going to be the first to go. Like, I don't think anywhere is safe, but if you're actually trying to, I think as long as you're alive, you should be trying to survive. You should be trying to pay it forward under any circumstance. Because I'll tell you, you alive today, all of us here gathered in this chat, we're alive because people decided to have families and pay it forward during the bubonic plague, during the years without summer where starvation was massive, through the Middle Ages, through the chaos of the Dark Ages, through the plunder and fall of Rome. I mean, modern times, we often talk about how bad it is, but we should absolutely remember how awesome it is. Indoor plumbing, hot water on demand, 60-odd% of welfare recipients, the last time I looked into it, have air conditioning so they don't have to get hot in the summertime. We have a myriad of entertainments that we can reach out and touch. In many ways, here's another way to think about it. King Louis XIV, the Sun King, he had an in-house chef. I forget the exact number, but every dinner that chef would prepare a dozen meals, 2 dozen meals, some absurd number of meals, and from those meals, prepared and orchestrated fresh, so that the king could choose which one he wanted to eat. That's what he had access to. The king, one of the most powerful people who ever lived, had access to. You, as a pleb, have more access to more variety of food than King Louis did. Because if you live in a town or you live in a city, there's a plethora of choices and all you need is some money to go and get them. the time that we live in is one of the most peaceful times the world's ever been through. You might not believe that, but it's true. We've had a lot of warfare and we've had some bad things go on, don't get me wrong. But my understanding of history, you almost have to go all the way back to Augustan Rome to find a similarly lengthy period since the end of the Second World War where most of the world has enjoyed relative peace, especially the civilized world. We haven't had a good, big European war. North America has been war-free for, well, since the Civil War, really. It's really, there's a lot of good going on. Like, there's a lot of people who say it's a terrible time to have kids and bring them into the world because of all the things that are happening. And that's one side of the coin. I cover a lot of that on my channel. The ideological differences, the sexualization of kids, all of these problems. And they're real problems. They're not small problems. But on the flip side of that, there is so much going on right now for human beings. It's one of the best times, if not the best time, to be alive, where just a few dollars gives you power in many ways, equal to kings. Like, it's... This was in response to this question, would you call the U.S. a safe haven versus Canada? I don't know. But I think things could be a lot worse for humans, even here in Canada. But it doesn't mean that they can't get worse, and that if we don't continue to work for better, that we don't end up back there. LOL, Frank. And you're also trying to have a conversation with 350 people at once. It looks like 580 just on, I haven't even checked over here. I don't know. X has got its own thing. I don't even know if I'm getting fed from X or if anybody's even watching over there. I have no idea. But yeah, I'm trying to have a conversation. That's what I think streaming should be. Unless you're doing an interview. I'm here to chat with the chat. Just smoke weed. Think that's one of the problems. People are smoking too much weed these days. Ask those who have questions to put it in caps, easy to see. No. I'd rather miss it. I hate all caps. Ugh. If you guys fill the chat up with all caps. Will you find a moderator that could help you? Maybe, at some point, maybe. I haven't seen anything here that I'd ban anybody for that needs moderation yet. Like, I could do it myself, but people say negative things. I don't really care if they do. Another massive tax grab, taxing weed. Man, they failed. They failed at legalization of weed. They couldn't have done a worse job. The only people who won are the reserves. The Rosneaths and the Aldervilles of the world, and the online not dispensaries, the online cartel weed, where you can get a pound delivered to your door for a few $100 securely in Canada Post. I've covered it on the channel. It's not just weed that you can get securely delivered to your door. Cocaine, meth, ecstasy, mushrooms, acid, PCP. You go to a website, you fill your cart like you do on Amazon, you pay, and then it just shows up at your door. The government's not doing that for you. They're charging you $10 a gram all the way up. No volume discounts there. You can only buy an ounce at a time, going through a legal dispensary. It's all got to be stamped and taxed. And meanwhile, by using the reserve system, they're building legal back doors to completely outcompete with the government. Take the online component off the table for a minute, and let's just go to physical retail locations. So when I lived in Ontario, I was about 40 minutes from Alderville and Roseneath, which is a First Nation. And you drive up there, man, because like if you're going that way, you get gas, because gas is 12 cents a liter cheaper. Back then, we're paying close to $2 a liter. I don't know what it is now in Ontario. It's a lot cheaper in Saskatchewan. But you drive up through there and get gas. And like, I went into one of the pot shops one day, and they got glass display cases with jars and fancy lights, like blue light shining up to make that crystal really shine. And you can see everything that you're buying before you buy it. It's all on display. They got shatter, they got bongs, they got everything you could possibly imagine. This was before it was decriminalized. That's the game they had on the reserves. And it wasn't natives that were buying it. Everybody was driving up there to get it. I sat on one of their couches because they had a lounge. And I sat there with some of their pamphlets, and I read, and I just watched people come and go for about an hour. And I watched the business, and I watched the money change hands. And I learned other times that I went up there, I watched how people came out back and were unloading. So the government, once they legalized, they created this new black market method where people are growing mass quantities of weed off reserve, and then they just got to rent a U-Haul, and they got to do one drive, and if they can get up there, they can just hit each of the places until they find somebody that'll buy the whole thing and then remarket it out the storefront. They got it beat. They had a real retail setup. No taxes on your purchases, no stamps on anything. And then you go into a government-regulated dispensary. You can't see anything before you buy it. It's stamped. It's expensive. You can't smell it. You can't taste it. You can't sample it. They screwed up legalization. People who bought pot stocks on the way up got wrecked if they didn't sell at the top. Like the industry it's the last thing I'm worried about is weed. I mean, if you ask me, I think legalization's failed. I think there's problems with it. Like, I don't think people should have been going to jail for possession and joints, and I don't think, honestly, to this day, I don't think it should be illegal, but I don't think it should be managed the way that it is. And I also am not a believer in the idea that weed does not have its consequences. I don't think it's a consequenceless choice. And like everywhere you go now, it's all you smell. Like, dude, we took the kids out Halloween trick-or-treating. Went to a small town, drove a while, went to the small town and started knocking on the doors, man. And like a couple of the places, they're just, the one place they had an outdoor thing set up where they had like a place where kids were intended to walk in, and they're just blazing gaggers, puffs of smoke. It just stunk. And I'm like, where's the subtlety there? I don't care if it's legal or not. I don't want my kids around that all the time. Like, you're doing a public-facing thing with kids. Like, you shouldn't be rocking beers while you're doing it either. You shouldn't be getting drunk off your rocker handing out candy. You should probably, that's me. I'm a conservative guy, I guess you'd call me. I just think you should be able to restrain yourself, and you should be able to be sober sometimes. You don't have, like, people go to work and they keep it straight while they're at work. I think you should do that in certain settings. Like, I'm not sure it's been good for things, I really am not. On Scarolo, like, I can't even really read that. One of the more clever ones is, it actually came from the Trailer Park Boys. It's Ontario, worst case Ontario instead of worst case scenario. It's worst case Ontario. I always thought that was rather clever. Worst case Ontario. What are your thoughts on poutine? Well, I like it. I've liked it too much. I am eating the poutine I've ate in the past as we speak, because I'm hitting the ground running this time. So I'm working off the poutine I've ate before. Poutine's fine. Poutine should remain legal. Here we go again. Nutters. Ha ha ha. MPD, bipolar authority, brain. I don't know. I guess I'm not smart. I don't understand what's going on. That guy's having a party. I have no idea what he's doing. Canadian government doesn't support Canadian families, just taxes them into poverty. Sure, they do subsidize poor Canadian families with a lot of handouts. So your CCB and your GST rebates and everything else, but while they're doing that, they're spending money in excess of what they take in, and so they're inflating your currency, and it's just all a shell game. It's just like your old age pension is being inflated and your purchasing power is being destroyed, and it doesn't matter how much free money the government gives you or how much of your money they give back. First off, it comes at the expense of producers, so anybody that's successful gets a bill for success, and then that success is redistributed to everybody else, and then the purchasing power that's being redistributed is being destroyed. So it's, you could just lower taxes and stop printing money in excess of what you actually have, and everybody would be better off. But instead we're doing this redistribution game so that we can create a huge administration class that gets paid really well to redistribute everybody else's money. And there's just a simpler way to do things, and that's just have a smaller government and make it less expensive for people. But that's not what we do. You're right. They tax prosperity into oblivion. So the people who are prosperous. Canada's experiencing capital flight ever since Carney came along. Like billions upon billions of dollars are leaving the country because you got a guy like Doug Ford dumping out bottles of Crown Royal thinking he's making a difference, targeting a company that has nothing to do with the United States. Diageo is a British company. And because they want to make a decision that will make and keep their business viable right here in Canada, they're going to move one plant because of all the regulatory burden and the cost of doing business here. They're going to move one plant stateside to bottle booze that they sell in the United States because the booze that they bottle for Canadian market and consumption is still bottled right here in Canada. Because they want to make a sound business decision, Doug Ford decides, I'm going to deny you market access to the largest market in Canada unless you comply. That sends a message to capital everywhere that Canada is not a safe place to invest in. And that's why nobody wants to invest here, unless that investment can be tied right back to Brookfield, because the money knows where the money flows. The money knows what Brookfield's all about, and they know who Prime Minister Mark Carney is representing. So you might get to see some money there. But, it's a chill. No one wants to keep their money here, and so they're not keeping their money here. And those who are still under the radar and haven't been targeted are doing everything they can to get it out. There's apparently an internal argument going on in the chat between different people. I'm not going to weigh in on that. You guys just fight it out. They equate the cons in Canada with Trump elbows up versus cons. This idea that Poilievre is the American guy, that he's the guy that's going to give the whole thing away from the United States, is one of the most nonsense things I have ever read. He has bent over backwards to indicate that he's not that guy. And he's not in power. He hasn't had any real influence for over a decade. He's the leader of the opposition. He wouldn't go on American podcasts to keep that message consistent. And Carney comes in here with his wealth in the United States, with his life built in the United States, with Brookfield Holdings and a so-called blind trust that are still based in the United States and make their money off North American integration. Comes in here to manage the place. And I still think there's a sound argument to be made that he is managing the place with an eye to North American integration. They may not like Trump, but the idea that the United States and Canada are going to have this divorce, if we do that, Canadians are the ones that will suffer the most. It's far more likely that Carney is engineering things to the benefit of U.S. banking and U.S. business interests than he is. He's not here to save Canada. And I don't know why, and this is why the Conservative Party remains weak, is that Poilievre's afraid to say that the Liberals ruined our relationship with our best and most reliable trading partner. He uses that language too, that the Americans have somehow become unreliable and unpredictable. The Trump administration is one of the most easily predictable administrations that the United States has had, because most of what they're doing is on the surface. Trump has indicated what his problems are on the surface. There's nothing unreliable about that when it is predictable, and how to satisfy and how to deal with the United States is predictable. The message that the Liberals have ruined our relationship with these people is an easy one for the Poilievre Conservatives to deliver, but they don't, because they are so afraid of the label that they are pro-American, will give the whole place away. It's nonsense, and what's even worse is that the Conservative Party allows that message to dictate their actions. Canada is Quebec and Ontario. The West is just a resource colony for them. It's in their constitution. The West will never have fair representation. I can't add any more to that. We talk a lot about Quebec, but we should talk more about Ontario and the politics of Ontario, because that's the even bigger problem. And the West does not have taxation with representation. We don't even really have representation. And the political party we fund, and the political party that is its entire base is Western. I mean, yeah, they have got seats east, but the majority of everything comes from the West. Once they go east, they don't even really appreciate the West. They all seem to become federalists and dedicated to that Laurentian thinking as soon as they go east. Soon you might need a visa to enter the U.S. Yeah, if we keep going. We keep trash talking. We keep putting out cartoons where we talk about Trump shitting himself. We keep running these ads telling people not to advertise on social media and to hamstring their own businesses so that they can avoid empowering American businesses while they sell Chinese products. We keep doing this absolutely patently absurd stuff, and we might find that all the privileges we take for granted are finally gone. I mean, Trump talking about not opening the Gordie Howe Bridge and all of these things, it's just a symptom. It's a sign of things to come. We have the most important renegotiation of a trade deal this country's ever faced coming up in July. And we're not going to get it. I don't think we're going to get it. And we don't realize what a self-own that is. We're suffering needlessly. We're going to make it harder for Canadians to prove some kind of point about sovereignty. When the country was replaced in 1982 by Pierre Trudeau, literally replaced, and nobody got to vote for it. The flag was replaced, and I believe it was 67. It was sometime in the 60s. We replaced the flag. Nobody got to vote for that. People don't even remember the original flag of the country. That they talk about fighting to defend the legacy of the troops that fought in the world wars and don't realize that the country those troops fought for was completely erased and Canadians never got to vote for it. A country that, under Mulroney and under Chrétien and Martin and under Harper, eliminated its gold reserves, destroyed its sovereignty, sold itself out to China, and gave the Americans outsized influence, starting under Deef when he canceled the Avro-Aero, when we started demilitarizing the country and turning our army into the woke thing that it is today. No offense to the Canadian soldiers who are serving and struggling through this. The rainbow sidewalks. Lots of money to paint rainbow sidewalks, but you don't have enough money to get the dangerous mold and the forever chemicals out of the barracks. That process started a long time ago. Giving China the Foreign Investment Protection Act, and now all of a sudden you want to rally about sovereignty? We had a freedom convoy, and the flag itself, we were told, was hate speech. People were getting pulled over because they were displaying Canadian flags. You were suspect if you showed patriotism. That was 2022. And now here we are in 2026, and they want to drape themselves in the maple leaf and pretend that they're patriots? They want to talk about sovereignty after decades of it being destroyed. Now all of a sudden you're going to be nationalists? Told you have no core identity? Told that you're a cultural mosaic with no core identity, that you're a post-national state, and now all of a sudden we're going to reawaken latent Canadian nationalism superficially. Yeah. Queen Roma Carney, don't get me started. Don't get me started. Dedulu, don't get me started. It's kind of funny because when I referenced earlier going to Ottawa and doing that mini doc, I was there on Parliament Hill the day before. And I was just filming the goings on. I talked to, there was a group there that didn't like the fact that the Canadian government was shipping billions of dollars or millions of dollars, one or the other, to India, basically where people were being kidnapped and disappeared, and the Canadian government was providing foreign aid, and nobody cared about that. I actually filmed a segment with those people that's in that mini doc. And then something I didn't film was my first encounter with the Romana Dedulu Queen of Canada Brigade, They had a rally that Friday, and I didn't know what I was witnessing. I'll tell you, if I knew what I was seeing, I would have been way more active and involved in getting in there. But they had their shiny purple logos and their shiny purple T-shirts, and they were actually there all the way back. I don't know if Roman was. I imagine she was, but yeah, I don't know if her authority is being recognized by the courts right now. It's get a life. Leave Harper alone. Leave Harper alone. That poor guy. He was so great. Oh, yeah, he was so good. He was so good for everybody. Hi, Frank. How are you? Not bad, man. Not bad at all. Pretty good. Other than the fact that my plan for having background music and stuff didn't work at all, and I can't play the videos that I was going to play. I'll shoot them tomorrow in a standalone video. We'll do it more normal. StreamYard will still be good for interviews and such as and live streams, because we're going to get some people. There's some smaller content creators I want to get exposure for. And there's some people I want to talk to. So this is all still going to work. I've got it for a year. I've already spent the $600. So I have it for a year, and we'll get a chance to use it. Stand on guard with me. You're not the only one. I don't know what I'm not the only one of, but I guarantee you I am not the only one of whatever you're talking about. Why are you paying anything? What are you doing? Talking about taxes? Because I don't want my life destroyed? That's what you call government's a protection racket. Just like you pay the mafia money, you pay the government money. Christ said, whose picture's on the coin? And the answer was Caesar's, so give to Caesar what is Caesar's and worry about storing, up your riches in heaven. I'm massacring the quote, but you get my point. I pay taxes because that's what you do. I don't have to like it. I don't have to pay any more than I have to, but you got to do it. Frank, how's the fasting going? Pretty good. It's going good with, there's some carne mixed in there. And then 2 or 3 nights ago, I broke down. I got into the children's cereal. So, got some Co-op branded Honey Nut Cheerios, and I had some milk with them. Ate it about midnight. Kept working until about 2 in the morning. Went to bed. Had heartburn all night. Couldn't get to sleep. Lost the whole night's sleep out of the deal. Felt bloated and terrible. And it was just a reminder of the bad habits I'm breaking and why I don't want them. It's going good. It's going good. Mark Carney is a stooge with a fake smile. Yes, and he's a gifted liar. He can say one thing and then say the opposite, and he can do it with his body language ringing truth. He's very smart, very clever. And that's why he's such a hard read. He's people say he's just a stooge like Trudeau. He's not. He's nothing like Trudeau. Trudeau was not in control. Trudeau was delivering a message. And Trudeau was an actor. Mark Carney is in control. He is managing. He might be doing it in concert with other people, but he's managing. And Doug Ford is one of the people that Mark Carney is managing. That much is obvious to me. Doug Ford is a pretender. He's worse than he's false. He's fake. He's nothing that he ever said he was going to be. And not well, but I used to know Doug. Not well, but I used to know him. I don't know what's going on with the chat. I am so far behind. This guy. I don't know what this guy's doing. I'm missing something. I think he's just trolling us now. LCBO bankrupted Jim Beam in Kentucky. The LCBO sucks. Alcohol prices in Canada suck. What's your take on China canola tariffs rolling back effective date? I'm not sure I fully understand that. Rolling back effective date, I don't know what that means. I got to be honest with you. I know that there was a promise that the tariffs were going to be not removed, but taken down. I've noticed grain moving. I'm assuming it's canola that's now moving along the railroads. I don't know what rolling back effective date means. There were some limited things that came out of the meeting with China, but Canada really came away empty-handed, and it's kind of disgusting to me how the media ran with that like it was some kind of victory for Carney, and I mean, some electric vehicles coming in, which isn't good for anybody. Talking about an auto strategy that's just seeing what's left of the auto industry leave the country. I don't know. Do facts really matter? The Kalistani Bridge. The Kalistani Bridge to nowhere. Like, that's half the country now. It's at least Surrey and Brampton. Oh. Anyway, guys, it's been 3 hours. This was supposed to be just a test. So, I'm going to sign off for now. I'll be back at you. If you feel so inclined, I suppose I should tell you. See how enthusiastic I am? It's the part I least like. I should tell you. If you want to support me, go to the channel, the website, frankvaughn.com/donate. See if we can make this viable. It's never going to have ads. It's never going to be sponsors. I'm not going to show products. I'm not going to sell merch. If I have the budget, I'll make merch and I'll give it away. I'm not going to sell it to you. And this is the way it's going to stay until it's not viable. And if it doesn't become viable, then I have to just go do something else. That's the way it is. And I will see you next time, hopefully with music that works. That didn't work. There we go.